Okay, so I'm assuming now that we're recording. And let me go over here to my opening script. And let's start. Airline Pilot Guy, episode 196.
Flight 209er, you're clear for takeoff. Roger. LA, good morning. 123.9.
Roger. Less than.
Hello, you're listening to the Airline Pilot Guy Show, the view from my side of the cockpit door. I'm Captain Jeff, your host, broadcasting live from Studio 302 in the Hyatt Place Hotel in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. In this episode, an update on the Lux Air Gear Up / Smoke event, a brand spanking new C-130J gunship broken beyond repair, another laser attack, this one serious, and an Avia Traffic 737 lands a wee bit too hard. So get all settled in, tray tables and seat backs in their upright and locked positions, electronic devices powered on. Flight 196 is ready for pushback. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of the Airline Pilot Guy Show. And joining me, let's start with the ladies first. We have Dr. Steph, a physician and commercial pilot in Charlotte, North Carolina.
Hello. Good to be back.
Great to have you back with us. And also joining us from down south of where I am right now in Fort Lauderdale, just a little bit south of me in Miami, we have cargo, a freight dog extraordinaire, 777 co-pilot, Miami Rick.
Wow, those are way too many titles for me to handle.
Yeah, and obviously for me too.
Hey everybody, how's everybody doing? Good to be back.
How's your weather down there? Oh, it's just like it is right here.
Exactly how it is up there, which is why we usually file Fort Lauderdale as an alternate for Miami, and we don't get into either.
Cool.
That seems like a good plan.
And we also have another guest host with us tonight, and you've heard me talk about him all the time. He sent feedback before, and he's been an APG community member from like the very beginning. His name, and he's the website webmaster, the web guru, I call him, Arash Mahin, right? Did I pronounce your last name right?
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, Arash. Hey, guys.
Yeah, and he's up in Canada, in the capital of Canada.
Right.
No, in Canada, in Ottawa, Ontario. Ottawa. And do you get tired of hearing people say, like, if people said that I'm from Atlanta, USA, you'd go, no, I'm from Atlanta, Georgia, which is in the United States. Do you get tired of people saying I'm from Ottawa, or you're from Ottawa, Canada?
Yeah, I often run that test when I'm at airports. I'll, I'm sitting down having a beer. I'll randomly ask someone, or if they ask me where I'm from, I'll say Ottawa and pause, and everyone will go, Ottawa? Where?
Canada?
Where? Yeah, is
really
that Ottawa? Where is? Yeah, a lot of people miss that.
What stage that in?
Exactly. Ottawa, Illinois. There is an Ottawa, Illinois.
Cleveland.
Right. Yeah. You can say Toronto or Montreal. They'll pick up, but Ottawa is missed often.
Yeah. Well, tell us about yourself, Arash.
Well, commercially trained pilot like Dr. Steph, not a ATPL pilot, but commercially trained. On my spare time, I love doing aerobatics. I fly a little Grobe 115D for aerobatics, and I work for a large ANSP, which is a air navigation service provider, which makes sure that all the ILSs and all the nav aids are in check for you guys to fly around. So
excellent.
Cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. So I guess your forte is IT, right? Information technology.
Right. My background's in engineering, systems engineering, and so yeah, it's naturally just putting the commercial aviation side and the IT background into one place, and so I love what I do.
So how long was it? How long ago was it, Arash, when you kind of appealed to me, reached out to me and said, hey, I noticed you have a website and I think I can help out with that and, make it look a little bit better and get some better numbers and SEO and all this stuff you started talking about. I don't know what he's talking about, but how long ago was that? Was that like 3 or 4 years ago, something like that?
Yeah, it could have been 3 or 4 years ago. Yeah. I do that just on a part-time basis. It's just a hobby, put WordPress sites together and yeah, must have been 4 years ago.
Yeah. So he's the brains behind the whole APG site and the APG community and all that kind of stuff. So any props you have for him or any complaints?
Right. Yeah. Complaints, feedback, anything like that.
I'll be sending some complaints. No, I'm just kidding. Love the website.
By the way, Rick and Steph, remember you got to send some information in.
I know. I sent some.
I did.
Oh, okay. Good. Well, never mind.
Yes, I got both of them. Right.
Okay. Fantastic. All right. Well, let's see. I am on a 3-day trip, and on day 2 of that, I was here in Lauderdale yesterday, and then back here again today. So far this trip has been fantastic. Just nice, reasonably short legs, and the weather has been just beautiful everywhere I've gone. And let's see, we flew up from Lauderdale to LaGuardia this morning and then back this afternoon. It's just been great. So I hope it stays that way for the rest of the trip. Tomorrow we go from here to very early in the morning, from here to Atlanta, and then do a Dayton turn, Dayton, Ohio, and then back home around midday. And then I'm off for Thanksgiving. You guys have, well, let's see. Now, Thanksgiving in Canada, has it already been celebrated?
Yes. Yeah, your Thanksgiving is, after ours.
Okay. Well, and Rick, I guess you're going to be celebrating Thanksgiving somewhere in South America. Where are you going?
No. It's just I'm going on I've just been doing keto round trips for the last couple of weeks, which I have no problem with because I basically leave and come back the same day. So the flight leaves at 1 a.m. 1 a.m. ish, I guess, later tonight. And then I'll be back up here in the morning for in time for breakfast. So I'll be here, and that's the last bit of flying I have until next month. So I'll be here for Thanksgiving and the days after that. My next flight is I think December the 2nd or something, which is surprise, another keto round trip, which I love.
Oh,
so yeah.
So how long does it take to fly down to Quito?
So basically, from brakes off, pushback to brakes on after engine shutdown is 3 hours and 52 minutes. That's
short for you guys,
right? Yeah, right next door. So you get down there, and from the time they start preparing, because when we get down there, all the cargo's been palletized, everything's been organized. Basically laid out in sequence to load it on the airplane. And so from the time they open the main cargo deck doors and the main cargo doors, I guess the lower level ones, till the time everything's buttoned up, ready to go, it's should be more than 2 hours, 2 hours and 15 minutes sometimes. And so it's pretty quick turnaround, come back up here. So it's usually about a 10-hour day, about 4 hours down, 2 hours there, 4 hours back. So it's not too bad.
And for those of you listening, we have people listening to the show from all around the world. And when we talk about Thanksgiving, it's a holiday here in the United States where we kind of get together with family and fight. No, we get together with family and have a big turkey dinner, usually, traditionally. And
we fling mashed potatoes at each other.
Yes.
It had something to do with history and the pilgrims that came over to this new world and established colonies and that kind of thing. And they, with the Indians, had some kind of a big feast, I guess, to celebrate their peaceful relationships or something. And then after the dinner, I think the Indians killed all the pilgrims.
No, the interesting thing is that this is a beer related holiday because they actually because they were supposed to keep going south, man, like on just further south, but they ran out of beer. And back then they wouldn't drink water because you couldn't trust the water. So they ran out of beer.
I heard that's how they ended up deciding to land at Plymouth Rock and not continue going down. Yeah,
just basically run out of beer. So it's beer related.
Thank God for beer.
There you go.
Yes, that'll be our first prayer on Thanksgiving.
That's right.
Thank you, God, for beer.
Thank you, God, for beer.
Anyway, so it's our time to kind of just think about all the wonderful things in our lives and be thankful for them. And so I think no matter where you are, you can do the same thing.
Absolutely.
Like every day.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Let's see. And Steph, how have you been this week? Any
I
running?
have
Any
been-
marathons this week?
No, I have not done any running since I ran that marathon. One of my toes has turned a little black and blue, that's fine.
You gotta, does
Had
that
a
mean
little
you have to
boot.
cut it off?
No. I think I have a bruise underneath my toenail, or a little blood blister bruise.
I think they grow back, right?
They do. Yeah.
Okay.
I've had toenails fall off before.
I was talking about the toe.
No. Toes. Yeah,
Oh
they
yeah,
grow
that
back.
too. No. But no, I did some flying on Sunday evening. So that was nice. We just took a little dinner trip over to Raleigh, rented a car there, went to Applebee's, and came back, and just for fun. And that's pretty much the only exciting thing I've done since I talked to you guys last week. So,
Well,
but for Thanksgiving, I'm not working, fortunately. I have Thursday and Friday off, so I'm looking forward to that. I was not supposed to be on call, but I picked it up from my partner because I'm sure I'll be asking for a favor in the future. So, and I'll be around. So not a big deal.
well, good. So are you planning on spending it there in North Carolina, South Carolina, or are you going to head up to Asheville or what?
Yep. Asheville's still in North Carolina. And we're going to actually go out to dinner at the Grove Park with a couple of friends.
Oh, nice.
Yep.
I love that place. The Grove Park Inn is a historic kind
a
of
hotel.
resort hotel.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's really nice.
Yeah.
Oh,
Good
okay,
views.
that's cool. Yeah, I'm envious. You should.
I'm just happy
okay.
not to be cooking this year, to be honest.
Yeah.
I've never done the whole eat out on Thanksgiving. I think it's going to be unusual. I don't know how I feel about it, but I don't know.
I'd feel
Justice
good
is
about
working,
it.
and our friends we're
Yeah.
going with, they don't want to cook either. They actually organized it.
Okay. Well, let's see. Just thought I'd mention quickly before we move on to some other things here. The Acme Airlines T-shirt, APG T-shirts are back on sale. I mentioned that last week, but I gave you the wrong link. I said teespring.com/airline pilot guy, and as I was listening to the show when I was editing it, I'm thinking, well, that wasn't right. I probably should have corrected it, but I was too lazy. So here's the correction. It's teespring.com/Acme shirt. So if you are someone who wants another one of those shirts or you don't have one yet, Jim Mercado in Northern California, a professional designer, came up with the logo, and I love the design. Rick is wearing one right now. And if you want one as well, head over to Teespring, teespring.com/Acme shirt, and get yours today. And if you order before the campaign ends on the 7th of December, I think they guarantee that you'll receive it by Christmas in the United States. Not sure about international orders. And let's see, a little excitement in the news. You know, we know about all the terrorist attacks and all that kind of stuff. But another thing happened. Woke up this morning getting ready to go to the airport and turned on one of the cable news networks, and they were talking about a Russian Sukhoi Su-24 was shot down by Turkey, I think F-16s. Oh, see how Turkey, Thanksgiving. I kind of combine that all together.
That was nice.
Yeah.
Finally.
Thank you.
Flawless.
Well done.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Very seamless. Smooth. Anyway, so that's a little bit aviation-related news, and I'll put a link in the show notes if you want to check out on Wikipedia the information about the Su-24 fighter bomber. Kind of, it reminds me a lot of the variable geometry F-111 that we had in service here in the United States. And in fact, one of our APG community members flew as a weapon systems officer, navigator guy on the F-111 Mike Dell. And so maybe he'll have something to say about that Su-24. But apparently the Turkey people said that they violated their airspace and they shot them down. So anyway, anything else to say regarding that? Probably.
Did you see how the rebels were actually shooting at the pilots hanging from the parachutes as they were coming down?
Isn't there something wrong? Isn't that against the rules?
That's against the Geneva Convention. Absolutely, you can't do that.
Yeah,
and now, I mean, that wouldn't have happened if it'd been an F-111. That wouldn't have happened because the F-111, if you were to eject, the entire front cockpit comes off as an ejection capsule, which is, I guess, not the case on the on this type of on the Su-24. But still,
Oh.
I mean, if you've ejected, you're basically off limits. You can't take aim and shoot at pilot that's ejected. So come on.
Right. I mean, you can capture them and put them in a prisoner of war camp or something like that, but shooting them, that's just not fair.
Yeah, it's cowardly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, well, enough of that. Let's continue on with something more lighthearted like this.
Johnny, how much more coffee?
No thanks.
The APG Coffee Fund. If you want to help out the Airline Pilot Guy show financially, you can become a member of the Coffee Fund cadre or the Coffee Fund Corps. I'm not sure which one I've settled upon yet, but those are the folks who have contributed to the fund over time. And a couple different ways to do that. You can use a one-time donation or even a recurring donation via the classic PayPal method, or you can become a patron to the show via patreon.com. And to find out information about those ways to become part of the Coffee Fund Corps, head over to airlinepilotguy.com/coffee. And since the last episode, we have Rory, who has contributed several times, Richard, not sure how to pronounce his last name, so I'll skip that, Scott Cotton, Todd, Karen, and Daniel Egan. Now, I mentioned last episode that we have a new patron, and his name is Ryan Cotton. And that kind of sounded familiar to me, but I didn't know why. And then when I saw Scott Cotton, same last name, I thought, oh, I know those guys. I met them, and we all met them, Miami Rick and Dr. Steph and I, in Asheville when we were there for the
Brewgrass.
Brewgrass Festival.
Brewgrass. Yes. And we met over at, what was the name of the place where we met, Dr. Steph?
Barley's Taproom and Pizza.
Barley's Taproom, yes. And we met Ryan and Scott, a father and son team. And so thank you guys for your contributions to the APG Coffee Fund. And let's see, speaking of patrons to Patreon, we have two new patrons, Frank Lynn and Joe Skina. So thank you, one and all, for your contributions to the fund. And what we do with that is we use it to offset some of the costs of doing the show, web hosting and media hosting and equipment costs. And you may have heard several of us are going to be heading over to the UK in July next year for the Farnborough International Air Show, and that'll help offset some of the costs of flying and traveling and staying in hotels and drinking beer over there in Farnborough. Thank you. All right. Well, they're not singing anymore, so it must be time for me to shut up.
Real quick, you mentioned the folks who were in Asheville with us. I was going to give a shout out real quick to Isaac Lamb because he passed his commercial multi-engine check ride yesterday. So congrats to Isaac.
Congratulations.
Awesome.
Man. Good deal.
Congratulations. I wish I had an applause button to push.
Sorry,
I forgot to load that. Darn it.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
Yay. Applause.
Yay, Isaac. Way to go. And let's see. So with that, I think it's now time for...
Stand by for news.
Paul Harvey. Couple APG community members sent me links to this story. I guess back in April, the U.S. Air Force was doing some test flying on the Lockheed Martin AC-130J Ghost Rider gunship, and they were doing some kind of a big side slip maneuver. Let's see if I can get the actual name of it here. One of these articles talks about the actual maneuver. A steady heading slide slip. Let me try that again. A steady heading side slip. And the side slip is a maneuver in which the pilot slightly lowers a wing, applies opposite rudder. You've heard us talk about it on this show before. That's kind of the method that I use for crosswind landings. And in this case, the aircraft exceeded the targeted angle of side slip until it departed controlled flight and momentarily went inverted before being recovered after losing approximately 5,000 feet of altitude. This is a C-130. That's a lot of altitude for a C-130. Let's see, the plane was at 15,000 feet when the mishap occurred. Recovery was at 10. And it flew back safely to Eglin Air Force Base. But they're going to have to scrap the airplane because it was over-G'd, exceeded the load and stress limits on the airframe. And this is a new airplane. And it's a pretty, C-130s are beefy airplanes. And they must have really over-G'd that thing to basically say, you know what, it's kind of a complete loss.
They don't say just how many G's, do they?
No, they didn't. I didn't see that anywhere. But I would imagine that airplane can handle, some pretty high G loads. In fact, David Vanderhoof from the Airplane Geeks, if you're still there with us in the chat room, maybe he's an expert at military aviation. Maybe he knows what the G limits are. I know that the C-130 is one of your favorite airplanes. Maybe he can tell us. Big Al says, Captain Al, the airframe was banana shaped.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, that's how they could tell it was over-G'd. Ooh, that's not supposed to look like that.
It's like, there's your problem.
There's your problem. Surprisingly, nobody was injured. I guess everybody was strapped in, thank goodness. And 115 million buckaroos there down the drains.
There's your tax dollars at work. The interesting thing about this plane is that they fly left turn patterns, I believe, because the actual guns are on the left hand side of the airplane. So I guess it's a lot like NASCAR racing, where it's all turns to the left.
They're not ambi-turners.
Maybe that's got something to do with it.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a joke there somewhere. By the way, he's alluding to the fact that I like to watch NASCAR. And in fact, they just had the last race of the season in Homestead, south of where Miami Rick is right now. And my guy who retired this year, Jeff Gordon, was in contention to win the championship, but he didn't. He finished, I think, sixth or something. But anyway, it was a good race. And, so make fun of me for watching cars go round and round, making left turns.
Maybe next year they'll switch it up and do some right turns somewhere. Just kind of keep it fresh.
Yeah, so it looks like the guy who was flying this thing just I don't know what happened there. Yes, Dr. Rick. I mean, Dr. Steph.
Oh no, I was going to talk about NASCAR some more. We'll move on from that.
Okay, you're going to make fun of me some more?
I was going to, but I'll save it for another date. I'm sure
I can
be more
replace you with another host. You watch it. Okay, let's see. Let's continue on here with this article. A pilot's career is left in the balance after military strength laser attack on his airplane at Heathrow. British Airways flight over Heathrow. A laser was shown into the cockpit from the ground. The pilot sustained extensive damage to the retina of his right eye and has not been back to work since. Immediately after the attack, the pilot was taken to a hospital in Sheffield for treatment. The co-pilot's career is now in serious jeopardy after extensive damage sustained to his right eye. And according to British Airways bosses, the aircraft was landing at the airport when the incident happened. It has already been deemed as the most serious laser attack in the UK to date. Then the article goes on, some quotes from the BALPA, I guess. We call it ALPA here, but with a B in front of it, I'd say BALPA. Is that right? We have a couple of UK airline pilots with us in the live chat room. Maybe they can let me know if I'm saying that correctly or not, but that's the British Airlines Pilots Association. Mm-hmm. They said that his retina was burnt in one of his eyes. That can't be good. So that's why they're saying this is a military strength laser.
So how do civilians get military strength lasers? Are those even legal for civilians to own? How are
the military supply store?
But come on, really?
I don't know.
What do you have to? I
don't know what a military strength laser is, but
I guess it's like really super high powered. I guess I don't know.
Well, yeah.
No, I'm not sure what it doesn't really say in the article what that means. but whatever it is a bad boy.
Yeah.
And this is serious stuff, people, and it's just a matter of time before one of these things is going to actually take an airplane down. And we hope that does not happen. But
you see, there's that, and there's also the fact that we as airline pilots count on our eyes. For that's our livelihood. So I mean, come on, it's not right to play with people's life like that. Just keep your lasers to yourself and just don't shine them at aircraft. That's responsible.
Right. And so that co-pilot, is out for at least the time being until his retina can heal, and hopefully it will heal enough so that he can practice his livelihood of flying airliners for British Airways. But there's another co-pilot here in a different story that will not be returning to work at his airline, and not because his retina was burned, but because he did a boo-boo. And you'll remember that we were talking about an incident on the 30th of September of this year, a Luxair de Havilland DH-8D at Saarbrücken. And we were kind of scratching our heads trying to figure out exactly what happened. They had already taken off, and then the gear was already up, but then there was some kind of fire in the back, and then they decided to go ahead and crash land the airplane. And we were all going, what? Once you reach that point, you don't put the airplane back down, especially if you've raised the gear. So the reason why it kind of all sounded fishy is that on November 17th of this year, the airline reported in a press conference that the first officer had retracted the landing gear too early, about 3 seconds prior to rotation. That's not good. And before the captain aborted the takeoff, causing the aircraft to settle on its belly without landing gear, which resulted in heat and smoke in the cabin. The captain as cabin crew acted well in the course of the occurrence. The first officer, however, was suspended. So now it makes sense. They didn't abort because of the smoke and fire in the back of the cabin. It's just what that co-pilot did ended up causing the smoke and stuff back in the back of the airplane. So.
Yeah, and we were talking about how we were having a Twitter convo there, how a little back and forth about what is it that we look for when retracting the gear immediately after takeoff, and it's usually two things. You're looking for a positive rate of climb on both your altimeter, your barometric altimeter, and your radial altimeter, both altimeters. And if you can actually if you're in VMC conditions and you can see outside, just verify that visually that you're actually climbing away. So the call for retracting the gear is the pilot monitoring will say positive rate. The pilot flying will confirm that. And then once that positive rate is confirmed on both the altimeter, radial altimeter, by your vertical speed indicator, and by looking outside, if you can, then the pilot flying will call gear up, and that's when the pilot monitoring will actually go and actuate the landing gear lever to the up position. I mean, there's no hurry to put the gear up right away. I mean, just don't jump the gun. Just follow procedure and pace yourself, I guess. Huh?
Right. Yep.
Pace yourself.
Good point. Yep. What's the hurry?
Exactly. What's your hurry?
By the way, I just noticed that my audio recorder has been off this whole time.
Has it really?
Yeah. But that's okay. I'll get the audio from the, hopefully Blab is recording this. If Blab, if you're not recording this.
Weren't we going to make a checklist for this?
Yeah. Well, yeah, we were going to do that, but all
right.
See, I'm really good at writing things down and putting things on calendars, but I'm never good at actually looking at these things. So if I had a checklist, I probably wouldn't look at it. Now, I do in the airplane. Don't get me wrong. I'm a good boy.
We need to tape it to the audio recorder. Would you look at it then?
No. You're right. Yes, I would. Yeah. I need to do that. Okay, well, we'll figure this out. But now it's on. Okay. And let's see. Here's another interesting one on Avia Traffic. It's a, how do you pronounce Kyrgyzstan? Let me try it. Kyrgyzstan?
Kyrgyzstan.
Sounds good
Boeing
to me.
737-300 was performing a flight from Kyrgyzstan to another place in Kyrgyzstan. With 153 passengers and 6 crew, they were performing an ILS approach to OSH's runway 12, but they touched down a little bit too hard, causing all gear to collapse and separate. All 3 landing gear to collapse and separate. And
wow.
Yeah. Let's see. The aircraft went off the runway, ran over rough terrain. Left-hand engine, a CFM56, separated, and the right-hand engine received substantial damage before the aircraft came to a stop about 1,500 meters down the runway. 3 occupants received serious injuries, 5 occupants minor injuries. So the deal was they had originally departed Krasnoyarsk, Russia for OSH, but diverted to Bishkek due to fog at their destination airport. After the weather was reported improved, the crew departed Bishkek for Osh after about 1.5 hours on the ground at their destination alternate. Ground observers reported that the fog became rapidly dense just prior to the aircraft's touchdown. Visibility deteriorated with what appeared to be about 150 meters or 500 feet. And this runway instrument landing system is just a Category 1 approach, from what I can tell here.
Mm-hmm.
Minimum RVR 720 meters, 2,400 feet. Decision height 220 feet. Yeah, that's a Category C. That's a Category 1 approach. And it looks like they were trying to land in Category 2 or Category 3 conditions using a Category 1 approach.
Yeah, look at that vertical visibility 1. So basically nothing, basically 100 feet of vertical visibility. And remember how we talked about in the last episode how under FAR Part 25, aircraft landing gears are rated to be able to take the impact of an aircraft landing at max landing weight at 800 feet per minute. Mm-hmm. And apparently this must have been a little, higher than that, because for all 3 landing gears to collapse and, just basically end up the way the situation end up the way it did, that must have been one heck of a hit,
It'll get your attention.
Yeah, it must have been. Yeah. I mean, 5, and I think that these 5 or 3 occupants that received serious injuries, probably from the actual touchdown, that initial touchdown.
Possibly.
Yeah. So that is not good.
Especially if they weren't wearing their seatbelt or something.
Yeah. When you're in a low visibility situation, and you can only see very little of the runway ahead of you, you get this illusion. It feels like you're high. And so I'm sure that's what happened here. They just thought, I got the runway lights and everything else. And they just, without even probably realizing that they probably pushed the nose over and just like really came down at a high vertical velocity.
Mm-hmm.
It's a common illusion when you have low visibility conditions.
Yeah, I mean, even just looking at the pictures, you can tell how foggy it really was.
Yeah, and that was after after the fog had cleared a little bit. So, not good. And then finally, this from, I forgot who sent this to me just recently, this evening via Twitter. They said it might be, I think it was Chris. Yeah, Chris Cheatwood from the Hey Techies podcast. Sent this news item from the dailymail.co.uk. An American Airlines air flight from Cancun to John F. Kennedy on this just a few days ago, Friday. They came in, and turns out that 74 passengers had been aboard the flight, and most of them did not go through immigration or customs before leaving the airport. And this is the same night, I think, when those attacks occurred in Paris, ironically. And
it was Friday night. Which Friday night was that?
Yeah, I don't know which Friday night it is. Let's see. Yeah. Or no, this happened actually, the ISIS thing. Okay, never mind. Anyway, regardless, this is a huge security breach. I mean, Rick, you fly international all the time.
Mm-hmm.
If one person is somehow, avoids going through immigration and customs. That's a big deal.
But you know what? I'm just reading on the article, and what I kind of gather here is maybe there was an issue with the gate assignment, because it says here that some passengers in flight 1671 did not complete the immigration and customs process upon arrival when they were inadvertently directed to the domestic terminal. So either the aircraft parked at a domestic gate and no one went through the process. Mm-hmm. Which is, I think, probably the likelier scenario here, because why would some passengers go through the process and then others not? So right. I mean, whatever the case, just it's an international flight, and people need to be properly screened when entering our country. So this is right. This is interesting.
Sometimes Rick, at the airports they have swing gates. And that's operated by the airport. And if they miss to swing that gate, if it's close to a domestic area, you'll have a flow of passengers that kind of gets out of control. And I think that they should theoretically shut down the airport. Some of the airports that I've seen, they go into this red alert mode and they shut down and try to check all the passengers. But more often than not, that swing gate is the issue.
Exactly. Yeah, you're right. So the gate will swing, and then if it's in the closed position, then basically the passengers will deplane and basically be on the sterile side of the terminal, and that sterile side takes you to the immigration and customs facilities, and then the non-sterile side is the domestic side. So yeah,
right.
That might be the case as well. So, but this is interesting. This is someone's going to have to answer to a higher authority here and see what happened.
Yeah, that was a big boo-boo. Oh well. That's about it in the news folder for tonight. So now I think it's the best part of the show, which of course is your feedback.
Captain, incoming message.
Okay, we'll start off with Chirath, and he sent a link to an article in the Wall Street Journal about, and this is a while back, and I wanted to talk about this for a while, but just haven't gotten around to it until now. Airbus official urges major pilot training changes. The safety official says that many training programs are too predictable, and I agree. And although someone who has to go through these training programs, it's kind of nice when we kind of have a heads up of what's going to happen to us so that you can kind of mentally prepare for the situation. I don't think you learn quite as much as if you were experiencing something that you didn't know was going to happen, and then kind of, see what happens with, how you react to the situation. And that's where I think you really learn from. And I think that Miami Rick here probably will have something to say about this, because you're a simulator instructor pilot as well as a line pilot as well.
Yeah, and we talked about this. I don't know if it was on the last episode or the one before that, where nowadays airlines are going to a system called AQP, or Advanced Qualification Program, which has been around for a while, but some airlines they've taken a bit longer to get there than others. And basically the deal with AQP is in advance exactly what's going to happen, what kind of maneuvers you're going to be flying and evaluated on. And you were basically supposed to fly that maneuver exactly as it's set forth on the manual. And every call out for every action needs to be said verbatim as it is stated in the manual. And so, for example, if on your manual it says that during a rejected takeoff, the call is reject, and the pilot doing the rejected takeoff calls stop, it doesn't matter whether you got the maneuver right or not. The fact that he said stop instead of reject counts as a strike against him. And if you accumulate 5 of those, whether or not you got the maneuver right, then you basically fail your check ride. Now, in my personal view, I don't think this is the right way to go, because I believe that, as both the line pilot and as an instructor, I believe that a pilot's initial reaction and a pilot's initial action when faced with a abnormal situation needs to be something that's evaluated, because if let's say the simulator profile calls for an engine failure under AQP type instruction, you're going to know what engine is going to fail. It's going to say, the right engine is going to fail. And so there's no surprise factor there. In the traditional, simulator programs that I was used to flying up until, a couple of years ago, you had a general idea of what was going to happen. You knew you were going to get an engine failure at some point. It might be an engine failure on takeoff, on rotation, on the climb out, on the cruise, on the approach portion or the landing portion of the flight, and you didn't know what engine was going to fail. So you had to react accordingly. You had to put the correct rudder input. And if you put the wrong rudder input in, obviously you'd lose control of the airplane, and then you'd bust the check ride, which is kind of like real life, because if you put the wrong rudder input in when it comes time to correct for an engine, for dissimilar thrust, and you put the wrong rudder in, then you're going to lose control of the airplane. You're going to crash. And so that needs to be something that's evaluated, the initial pilot response. And now with this new AQP program, that's going the way of the dodo. And I don't, as I said, I don't particularly agree with that. So I don't think it's a good idea.
Yeah, I don't think it's so important to, you get the exact verbiage, word for word. It's what you do, your actions.
Exactly right.
Not what you're saying.
Exactly right.
And there's more than one. I mean, obviously you want to have things as standard as possible so there's no confusion, but there's more than one way to say exactly the same thing and have your meaning be understood, and everyone's going to know exactly what you're doing.
Exactly right. And that is the reason why airlines have what are called standard operating procedures, so that everybody basically operates under the same set of rules. And no matter who you're flying with, I know that, Jeff or Steph or anybody, they're going to fly the exact same way, whoever it is that I happen to be flying with that day. So that's what SOPs are for. So, yeah, I don't know. Not too happy with that one.
So Rick,
Did you just
what would happen if you, on a check ride like that, you accidentally, you tap the wrong rudder, and then you realize within seconds and you correct? Would the check ride still be a fail? If you recover within you notice you got the wrong rudder and you correct immediately.
Well, the thing is that it depends on the stage of the flight. If you have an engine fail right at the moment of rotation, you have no time to recover if you put the wrong rudder in. Imagine you are kind of like when you're driving, you're going, maybe 80 miles an hour, and there's a dip in the road, and you need to, and the road dips to the right, and you need to obviously correct to the left to keep the car going straight. If the road dips to the right and you correct to the right, you're going to run out of road because you're going fast, and there's no room to basically keep to react in time. And if you overcorrect, you're going to lose control. Same thing when flying an airplane. So it really depends on what stage of the flight this happens in. And also, if me as an instructor, if I see that somebody that's supposed to know what they're doing puts in the wrong rudder input on a critical maneuver as a critical maneuver as a engine failure on takeoff, then I'm going to be like, okay, wait a minute, what did you just do? Are you multi-engine rated? What are you doing flying airliners? So
Right.
Exactly. So when it comes to evaluating stuff like that, it's black and white. You either get it right or you don't get it right. And if you don't get it right, you're not supposed to be up there.
Right.
That's just how I think.
Hey, that's just the way it's got to be.
And, to think about if something, real world event does happen and you're under the stress of that moment, are you going to automatically say the correct exact word? Probably not in a real life situation. So it's probably better to not focus on that level of, pickiness and detail, because again, like you were saying, I don't think it equates to real world situations.
Mm-hmm.
You need to be flexible with that.
But that is what the airlines are going for now,
Right.
So I don't know. It's what can I say?
So we'll have a link to that article from the Airbus, quoting from the Airbus official and how that training needs to be changed, et cetera. We'll have that in the show notes. Kevin writes on APG 193, there was a comment made about listening to the APG podcast while operating a Tesla being controlled by Tesla Autopilot. I related to that as I was doing exactly that when I heard the comment. Normally, my APG listening is confined to my time exercising, but my workload and the volume of APG over the last month drove, pardon the pun, me to expand my APG listening time to include the time when I drive into my office on the weekend to catch up on the ever-growing list of things that need to be done yesterday. The Tesla Autopilot can best be described as a combination of auto thrust and lateral control familiar to you. The auto thrust component is known as Traffic Aware Cruise Control, which has been available for almost a year. TACC allows the driver to set a maximum speed, and the car maintains that speed unless a vehicle ahead of it and in the same lane is traveling at a lower speed. In that case, the car slows to match the vehicle's ahead's speed and maintains a driver-selected distance, a feature that Miami Rick would have an immediate distaste for given his need for speed. Second component is the lateral control portion, arrived with a software update earlier last month. The update introduced the ability that keeps the car centered in the lane, including traveling around curves, unless the driver signals a lane change, which the autopilot then executes if no vehicle is detected in the adjacent lane. It's possible to operate the car with just the TACC engaged, the Traffic Aware Cruise Control. As you've mentioned lots of times, automation must be constantly monitored. It's no different on the ground, and I always have my hands on the steering wheel ready to take control. It takes little control input to disengage autopilot. The car chimes and the instrument cluster color changes when that happens to confirm autopilot has relinquished control. There are other methods using the control levers to also disengage the system. I expect Tesla to have another software update shortly that addresses some issues. Yes, the car gets updates just like your iPhone and Android smartphone. The latest update that introduced autopilot was my 6th since I picked up the car in mid-June. Sorry for the long feedback and don't feel obliged to use it on there. Well, I didn't feel obliged. It's really cool to see what's happening out there in the world of automation in automobiles, which is kind of in many ways parallel to what's happening in our world of aviation. And that's Kevin St. John.
Now that he mentions that keeping your hands on the controls, that's something that we do when we're operating in Category 2, Category 3 type landings, and we're going to have the airplane do an auto land. Even though the airplane is going to land automatically, we still have our hands on both the yoke and the throttles in case we need to take control from the autopilot and do a go around. So even though it's on autopilot, you still have your hands on the controls.
Yeah, because you never know. These are machines, and even the best of machines will sometimes not do the right thing. Let's see. Tim Van Ram sent this, and this is something that has gone around on the on email lists and the internet for quite some time, but it's always fun to read it again. And he said, I thought it might be time to share a little humor with all you APG guys, gals and guys. And for instance, air traffic control, Delta 351, you have traffic at 10 o'clock, 6 miles. Delta 351 says, give us another hint. We have digital watches. Oh, here, wait. Where's my rim shot? Here we go.
Where's the rim shot?
There we go. I need to have a really silly laugh track, too. O'Hare control to 747. United 329, traffic is heavy. Oh, no, I'm not going to do that one. Let's see. Here's one. Here's a good one. A student pilot became lost during a solo cross-country flight. Trying to locate the aircraft on radar, ATC asked, what was your last known position? Student, when I was number 1 for takeoff. And let's see. Where was the one about turning for traffic? Why don't you read it?
Up at the top, right?
Okay.
The one for noise abatement?
Yeah. Why don't you read that one, Steph?
Sure. So ATC, American 2341. For noise abatement, turn right 45 degrees now. Oh, it said American before. American 2341. Center, we're at 35,000 feet. How much noise can we make up here? Tower. Sir, have you ever heard the noise a 747 makes when it hits a 727?
Boom, bam. There we go.
That's pretty loud.
Yeah. So there are several others here that are quite humorous. So, but I'm sure you've seen them out there before. But thank you, Tim, for reminding me of us of that humor. And let's move on with Yunus Errol from Turkey. He says, I'm an instructor pilot and more than an av geek. I've been listening to your podcast since the very beginning episodes. Sometimes I find it hard to catch up with the new episodes because I usually listen to the podcast when I drive to the airport, and thank God the road is not long enough to finish the whole podcast. That's why I keep on listening when I take a walk or a jog. I must also confess that Miami Rick helped me fall asleep many nights. Oh, finally, it's Miami Rick, not me.
You're welcome.
It was the Rick.
Yeah, there you go. Joking aside, you, Dr. Steph, and Rick are doing a fantastic job. Airline Pilot Guy is simply the best podcast in aviation category. Well, it's, I think, one of the top ones. Keep up the great work. Since I know you prefer voice messages, I will keep it short. I wish you clear skies, unlimited visibility, and tailwinds. Bye. Well, thank you, Eunice from Turkey. Maybe Eunice was the one that shot down that Russian Su-24. Probably not.
Nah.
Yeah. Give us some more feedback and let us know. Okay. This is something that I should have played last time, but we didn't get to it. And this is time critical. And I want you all to listen, especially if you're an airline transport pilot, because one of the APG community members, Ison, needs our help. So let's hear what she has to say.
Hi, greetings, Captain Jeff, Maverick, and Dr. Steph, and all of the APG listeners. My name is Ison Taylor, and I'm a big fan of your podcast. And you might recall I talked to you during one of the meetup that you were in here at Norfolk earlier this year. I believe it was February, and it was one of the best time for me. Anyway, I'm a PhD student doing the research on human-machine interaction in the cockpit, you might recall it. And so my research is about because the automation is not giving adequate feedback to the pilots to help them to take manual control when the autopilot is engaged suddenly. There's a need for some design changes in the cockpit automation to be able to help pilots for better decision-making in such circumstances, in critical conditions. And there have been some accidents which caused by the inadequate automation feedback, as we all know, such as Air France or Air Asia, although they are still didn't release the final report about Air Asia, but it shows a lot of similarities to Air France. So everybody, I'm sure, remember it happened last December in Java Sea. As first part of my research, I just started to conduct a survey including commercial airline pilots about their opinions regarding the current automation in the cockpit. And the questions will include such as what they think about automation, how they feel about automation, if automation is helping them as a team player or automation is working against them. So I would like to try to get the general sense of the what pilots think for regarding the automation in the cockpit. Survey will be anonymous and no identifiable information will be recorded. So this is the first part of my research, and I'm going to ask you if it's possible, if you can post my email address in your feedback section, so any other pilots who's interested can contact me, and I will send them the survey directly from the. I'm using a survey tool which names Patrix. It's a very nice, very elegant survey software, and so once I got the email address from the pilot, I'm gonna directly send the link to the email address so they can start their survey. And I can't post the survey directly because I don't want any third grader or fourth grader who likes to fly in a simulator takes my survey although I'm thinking it will be very useful, but my goal is trying to reach the commercial airline pilots, especially who is dealing with automation regular basis. I'm hoping my research can make a contribution to the goal of helping pilots to have a better interaction with automation. So, and they will have a better decision making. My research is decision governance in the cockpit, and and Captain Jeff, and especially you, and if Miami Rick, if both of you can start to take my survey, I would really appreciate it. And if you know any other commercial airline pilots also, if you can promote my research, I would really, really appreciate it. And after the survey, my research will continue. I built a small simulation lab at my university here at ODU, and I will conduct some experiments later. Then I will need some commercial pilots as test subjects. But now my focus is my survey, and I would like to reach as many pilots as I can for my survey. And I appreciate for everything, for making the podcast available and sharing all those valuable information. And also, I'm learning a lot, also from Miami Rick. And I try to fly in 777 in Canada. I flew last December, and I realized that how complicated the cockpit. And I do really, really respect you guys. So anyway, again, thank you so much for everything you are doing. And hopefully I will get in touch with you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Ison. And it was all my pleasure meeting you in Norfolk, Virginia, along with Mark Van Ram and was it Ken Ray, who ended up, was like the night before he was heading to Acme headquarters for his interview, and he was hired and is now flying for us. And I think I'm probably forgetting somebody, but there was a nice group of people there at the little pub that we chose to get together in Norfolk downtown. And Ison, as she mentioned, a PhD student working on this this tough nut to crack. This, automation is something that we live with in our world of airline transport flying, and it's not going to go away. And we need to do what we can to improve it so that there's a good interaction between machine and human. And that's what her research is going to be involved with. And so those of you listening who are airline transport pilots, ATP airline pilots, please send Ison an email. And again, I'll have that in the show notes. And then she'll send you a link or send you the survey, and then use that information to continue her research. So that's really cool. All right.
Absolutely. Happy to help.
Okay. And so you can send them right away to us.
Yeah. Send them our way. Absolutely.
And we'll get on it. All right. Let's see. Moving on here. Nick Carson said, hope all is well with you three. I do have a question for all of you. What is the most memorable flight you have taken as a passenger that, for some odd reason, has stuck in your mind? And then what about when you are the pilot? I don't know. Do you have any memorable flights, any of you?
More than one, probably.
Yeah, I remember when I was, I must have been, 5 or 6, and I actually got to fly in a 707, which for me was, a big deal. It was, I think, the only time I ever did that as a passenger. I remember also when we lived out in Scotland, we used to fly between out of Glasgow to, and just remember, it was a Glasgow to Amsterdam flight on a British Caledonian 757, and I got to visit the flight deck of that plane for the first time. And that's when the pilot sat me on the seat, and he put his hat on me, and he just basically let me play around with the controls. So that was pretty memorable. And as a pilot, you never forget your first solo flight, I guess. That's pretty memorable. And then I guess another memorable flight for me was my upgrade check ride, I guess, on the 76. That was pretty memorable as well. So, just a couple there.
Cool.
How about
I mean, I was thinking of just most memorable flight as a passenger. Most of my most recent ones, I think I spend most of my time sleeping. But no, I think, like you were saying, as a kid, I don't remember how old I was, but I have a very vivid memory of sitting next to my brother, and he might have been 5, I might have been 8, and we were flying from Chicago to Tampa, and my grandfather lives in the Tampa area. And just that flight into Florida as we were coming in on approach, we were coming through, the big white fluffy clouds that you see down in Florida all the time, just a whole bunch of those. And we were talking about how they look like marshmallows and how we were flying through the marshmallows. And it was just really cool scenery. And I don't know, I'll always remember that flight and how excited we were about that. Just silly stuff. And then as the pilot, gosh, I don't know. They're all good ones. One in particular, we were just taking a night cross-country flight out over eastern North Carolina and up into southern Virginia. And it was this beautiful, perfectly clear night, and the moon was full. And we, as we're flying over that land, there's a lot of different rivers and small bodies of water, and the moon just kept reflecting off of the water. And it was just really, really pretty. I have lots of good pictures from that flight. So,
Nice.
How about you, Arash?
I would have to say a Pan American flight, a 747 Pan American flight, probably in the early 80s was my most memorable flight. And as a pilot, memorable, I'd have to say some of the scariest flights were probably the most memorable that stuck. But back and up north, going up north in Canada is always an eventful and memorable experience. Yeah, that's about it.
Yeah, it seems to me the ones that are most memorable to me are ones where I was, scared out of my wits.
Your brain doesn't let you forget those.
No. But one that I can think of is really the one and only time that I experienced some severe turbulence, literally just hanging on to the yoke and wondering if we were going to make it through this. And that actually happened in 2 different airplanes. One was a 727 coming into Atlanta, going through a pretty amazing wind shear. And the other one was foolishly flying a C-141B Starlifter over the Indonesian islands. And it was in the middle of the night, and we didn't have a radar that was working properly. That was the main problem. We should never have taken off. I was not the aircraft commander, and he convinced us that was okay to do. And we ended up flying through the top of a thunderstorm in the ITCZ over Borneo or something. I still don't understand why we couldn't actually overfly the island, but we were like flying in between. I think, what are they going to do? Throw, spears at us or something? Maybe they have I don't know. Maybe they have a sophisticated air defense system or something, but it didn't make sense to me at the time.
That's what they want you to think, that they have only spears.
Yeah, they probably do have like super missile systems or whatever. But anyway, so we hit one, and I had the Navy SEALs commander at the time on board with us. And after we finally made it through the other side of that system, he was no longer in the jump seat, and I think he was getting ready to bail out of the airplane. So that was pretty scary. And then I think probably the most positive, memorable flight that I had was, as Rick talked about, is one of these, what do they call that? Flight that you go on. I was a kid, and it was like a demonstration flight or something, like a tour with the 707. It was a relatively new airplane, and they were taking people up and around the Los Angeles International Airport area. And I remembered that was probably the point where I said, I think this would be a pretty cool job. So
this would be a cool way to pay the bills.
Yeah. Bills, you weren't even thinking about bills back then. I just wanted to be an airline pilot. That was before I knew that the pay was, pretty nice. It can be anyway. So I hope that answered your question, Nick. And he goes on to say a couple different things here. I was wondering, how long does it take each of you to prep your aircraft from the time you enter the cockpit from ready to taxi? How much longer does it take, assuming it's cold and dark, compared to warm and bright? Again, that's Nick asking about cockpit prep, for a typical aircraft. How about you, Rick? How long does it take?
For us, again, as he mentions, if it's the first, well, usually we'll never take the aircraft from a cold and dark, cockpit situation to actually getting the plane started and all that stuff. Usually when we get on the airplane, maintenance is they've already taken care of getting the electrical power established and all that stuff. So usually what we do is we'll start up the inertial system, and that usually takes about between 7 to 10 minutes for the inertial platforms to line up, and for us to tell the airplane where exactly on Earth it is. So that takes about 10 minutes. And then from there to load the flight plan up and all that, that's usually done by data link. So that's pretty instantaneous, I guess. So short answer, maybe about 15 to 20 minutes if you are really on the ball. Doesn't really take longer than that. Like at least for us, what really takes the bulk of time is I guess the ground handlers and the cargo handlers, loading the airplane and all that. But as far as just setting the airplane up and getting it ready to fly, we can be done in under 20 minutes, no problem.
And does that include the exterior pre-flight inspection and all that too?
Well, yeah, because while at my airline, the exterior inspection is done by the captain, so he'll be doing that, and then the FO will be in the flight deck taking care of all the FMC, the flight management computer preparation, and then after that going through the flows, checking the overhead panel and the instrument panel and making sure everything's where it's supposed to be. So yeah, as I said, 20 minutes should be it. If you are new on the airplane, obviously, and you really haven't gotten the hang of it yet, it's going to take you longer. But if your head's where it's supposed to be and you got the flows down, it's about 20 minutes.
So how about for you, Arash, the airplane that you fly aerobatics in? I mean, how long would it take to get everything ready to go?
That's that's relatively quick. Just a walk around and then you get in and start her up. It's probably about 15, 20 minutes if you want to do a pretty good inspection of everything. Yeah, about 15, 20 minutes. Back to Rick's point, I was once flying in we're doing a test flight on a 6-7, and I was sitting in the jump seat, and the first officer got in, and it was completely cold and dark. Nothing was on. And he was just staring at the overhead panel. And I looked at him and he goes, I've never got the plane in this state before. He took him a while to figure it out. It took about half an hour to get that thing up and running. But yeah, for a little single.
No, what I was going to say there is that there's actually a supplementary procedure that we refer to when we walk into a cold and dark cockpit, and basically what that does is it's kind of a checklist, and basically what we want to do there is make sure that anything that requires electrical power is in the off position, because basically a cold and dark cockpit means that there's no electrical power established in any of the aircraft systems. So the first thing you do is you're going to turn the battery switch to the on position, because the starter motor on the APU works off of the battery. It's a DC starter motor. And so before putting the battery in the on position, you want to make sure that anything that would require electrical power, that's a critical system, is obviously switched off. And then, you turn the battery, you push the battery switch on, then you start the APU. The APU gets going. It's a DC starter, a direct current starter, because that's what batteries are, direct current. And then once the APU circuit breaker trips in, the APU bus closes, that circuit breaker closes, and then you establish AC current on the airplane. And then, from then on, it's how most flights start for most crews, APU power established and that initial power up procedure taken care of. So right. from that point on is about 20 minutes. So it shouldn't take much more than that.
Here in Canada, it takes me longer to get a transponder code to understand the guy in the with the French accent and explain to him what I want to block between 5,000 and 7,404 than the walk around and startup. So
that's what you want that for.
Yeah.
Nobody needs that.
What was that call sign again? Yeah, that takes a while.
I'd say it takes
Yeah.
about 15 minutes. And, a lot of that is just being thorough. And I'm always flying rental aircraft at a flight school. And you never really know who flew it before you sometimes. So you want to make sure that your walk around is pretty thorough and you're checking for anything and everything, because I've seen all kinds of stuff. Usually it's little things like lights get left on and burn out, and there's never seems like there's enough oil. So if you have to add oil, that takes a little bit longer, a few extra minutes. And otherwise about 15, 20 minutes tops.
Well,
I think
Dr.
that's
Steph
pretty
makes a
standard,
good-
right?
Yeah.
She make a good point. It's not a race, and it's not like people are shooting machine guns at you, and you have to get the airplane off the ground, as fast.
If that's the case, by all means, skip the walk around.
Yeah, but you have to be deliberate and check the write-ups, the logbook, and make sure all the paperwork is correct. And if it's the first flight of the day and it's you come to the airplane and all the power's off, it takes a while to get everything running and the inertial reference platforms spinning and up to speed. And it's just you got to be methodical. There are a lot of first flight of the day items that we have to do that are only that first flight. So if you got the airplane, it's already been running, and it's just a crew change or whatever, or it's in between flights, then you can get the thing going pretty quickly. So
exactly, because as part of the of I guess the normal daily flight progression, you only do the secure checklist portion of the normal procedures at the end of the last flight. When you, at least that's how we do it in my airline. When you are, like, for example, tonight, I'll get to Quito tomorrow morning, and then it'll take us 2 hours for them to load the airplane up, and then I'll basically start. I'll finish with the shutdown checklist, and then I'll start again with the pre-flight checklist to begin the leg back up here to Miami. And then when I get to Miami tomorrow morning, then I'll go through the entire checklist procedure and finish with the secure checklist, and that'll be the end. And that's where I leave the airplane, and then I guess the next crew will come in, but the plane will be powered up. So you only do the secure checklist when there's a crew change or it's the last flight of the day. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. I guess most airlines are run that way, where if it's the first flight after midnight, then it's the first flight of the day. Even though you've been flying the darn airplane all night long, you still treat it as the first flight of the day. So anyway, great question. Oh, I think he continued on with one more. He said, I have an announcement that I want to announce that might be of interest to you, all of you. On the week of the American Thanksgiving, this week, I'll be flying on FSX in the Boeing 777-200 LR from Atlanta to Honolulu back to Atlanta. I'll be doing the exact routing as Delta Flight 837 from Atlanta to Honolulu and 836 Honolulu to Atlanta, but it won't be an A330-300. I'll be sending more feedback during the flight to keep the community informed. Very good.
Nick, let me commend you on your impeccable taste for aircraft.
Well, the Airbus A330-300?
No, the 777.
I know.
We're talking heavy iron here. Captain Nick.
Yeah, a man's airplane. All right, let's continue on with some audio feedback from Mechanic Bob.
Hello, Captain Jeff, crew, and listeners. This is Mechanic Bob. I wanted to send in some feedback to help answer some of Brad the Mechanic's feedback. He was asking a couple of questions. One of them was if a centrifugal compressor is similar to a turbo from a car, and it actually is very much the same. It uses a turbine in the exhaust that takes high energy hot exhaust gases to drive the turbine, which uses a shaft to drive the centrifugal compressor, which compresses the air by using high velocity compressor to sling the air outward by centrifugal force. And it works very, very much the same. The main difference is instead of having a piston engine in the middle of it, you have a combustion section of a turbine engine. The second question was, I believe he was asking if the reason that a jet engine doesn't need the igniters on while it's running is for the same reason that a diesel engine doesn't need spark plugs. So that reasoning would be different. In a diesel engine, which is a 4-stroke engine, you have 4 strokes where you have intake, compression, combustion, or your power stroke where the fuel is ignited. Or if it was a gasoline car, you would have a spark, or a diesel engine. It just uses the compression of the air to heat up the mixture enough to make it explode. And then you have your exhaust. In a turbine engine, all of this is happening at the same time. So your compressor is constantly going, your combustion is constantly going. There's no gap, there's no strokes. It's just all going through the engine continuously. So the reason you don't need to have your igniters on all the time in a jet engine is basically the same as if you had a butane torch. Once you light it, the flame is lit and it just keeps burning. Now, sometimes the igniters are turned on in flight. If you turn your engine anti-ice on, it automatically turns on your igniters. And that's just because, just to reduce the risk of having a flame out where something would blow the flame out. And if your igniters are already going, then they'll just it'll automatically relight that flame. Well, hopefully this helps answer Brad's questions. And once again, thanks for a great show and tailwinds.
Thank you, Mechanic Bob, for your input. Always appreciate a mechanic's point of view regarding these technical questions.
And I believe for centrifugal type compressors, the maximum number of compressor stages you can have is 2 because of the basically the compression is exponential in centrifugal type compressors, and so basically you can only have 2 stages of compression because otherwise the delta compression would be too high for the engine to handle. I learned that very, very early on in A&P school. Not the case with axial type compressors. You can have several stages of axial compression.
That's a good thing to point out. Did you know that Rick is an A&P rated mechanic?
It all makes so much sense now.
Yeah.
No, I didn't.
Isn't that amazing?
That was my ace under my sleeve there.
The rabbit in your hat.
Yep.
Okay. Continuing on with Miklos from Switzerland. I've been an avid listener of your show since I started my private pilot training about 1.5 years ago. Your podcast is the perfect blend of education, news, and interesting discussions, all spiced up with your great sense of humor. The show helped me a lot to keep my head in the aviation game between flying lessons. A big thank you for that. Well, you're welcome, Miklos. It's our pleasure. Last weekend, I've successfully passed my private pilot check ride, and I'm already thinking about starting my instrument training sometime next year. I really enjoy flying, but I'm 39, and as you like to say, I ain't no spring chicken anymore, so it's a bit late for a career change. But who knows? Maybe I'll be a part-time CFI one day. Anyway, I want to send you a link to a documentary that I found the other day. It's about a 77-year-old passenger who tries to land a Cessna after the pilot suffers a heart attack. The movie is well done with lots of original ATC audio, interviews, and a few heart-wrenching moments. And then he sends us the link, which I'll have in the show notes. If any of you are visiting Switzerland, I think I heard Miami Rick mention Basel the other day, and are up for a beer, please let me know. Basel and Zurich are both a short drive from where I live. Looking forward to many more exciting episodes. Wishing you all the best, Miklos. And thank you for putting the phonetic pronunciation of your name, because I would have said Miklos, but it's Miklos.
Nice.
All
that was
right.
nice.
So, Rick, you have a date for beer in Switzerland.
Sweet.
Beer and chocolate.
There you go. Can't turn that down.
No. What a perfect combination.
Mm.
Justin writes, my name is Justin. I live in Sydney, Australia, where I work as a flight instructor. I love the show, have been listening since episode 90. You have been a consistent source of motivation through my training, taking the plunge and quitting my financially secure corporate job, and through my first year working professionally as a flight instructor. So thank you. Attached is a photo I found amusing that one of my students took while working in North Africa. He says, engine fire? No, this is apparently normal for a Nigerian start cart. And it's in the picture. It's like a 737 or Boeing business jet?
It's a 7.3.
Yeah.
It's got a pointy. It's got a pointy nose. Yep.
Yeah, and or a BBJ, I think they call the the private model of that thing. And there's a start cart out there, and there's just a whole bunch of black smoke coming from it, almost covering up the airplane.
I've had that happen to me.
That's normal, I guess, in Nigeria, he said. I have a pass in all my ATP ground subjects, so I have some understanding of the topic. But would you and the Ricketts explain? Let's see, where are the Ricketts? Here we go.
Oh, no.
You didn't even have to say anything.
I know. The advantage of a balanced field length. Thanks again, and look forward to the day we have a meetup here in Sydney. And he says, by the way, the airport that you can't remember the name of that you visited during your U.S. Air Force days here in Sydney was probably Richmond Air Force Base, situated to the northwest of our beautiful city. And yes, Justin, you are correct. It is Richmond Air Force Base. And so this is a perfect time for me to take a break and stretch my legs as Rick will explain to us the advantage of a balanced field length.
Yeah, take
it away, Rick.
Take half an hour. I'll be done in half an hour. It won't take that long. So that's a good question. Let me let me think about this one here. Okay, so balanced field concept. Okay, so for us to understand what that is, we need to first understand a couple of definitions. The first one is the definition of the accelerate stop distance required. And as the name says, the accelerate stop distance required is the distance that your aircraft needs to accelerate from a standstill to takeoff speed, and then from that point stop, bring the aircraft back to a standstill or a stop. Taking into account the aircraft mass, the amount of thrust, and the atmospheric conditions. Density, altitude, temperature, airport elevation, wind direction, wind speed, and all that stuff, and also runway slope. So that's accelerate stop distance required. Then you have another definition, and that is the takeoff runway available. And that is the physical amount of runway, or the length of the strip designated as a runway, that you have available to conduct your takeoff maneuver. So when your accelerate stop distance required is equal to your takeoff runway available, that means that you're operating under balanced field concept. So how does that work? There is a crucial speed called V1, and that's one of three crucial takeoff speeds. The first one being V1, as I said. And I'm going to define the other two first. VR, or rotation speed, is the speed at which you begin to rotate the aircraft and put it in its takeoff attitude to get the aircraft off the ground. And then V2 is your minimum safety speed, which is a speed that you are going to fly if you have an engine failure. And that particular speed is going to guarantee you obstacle clearance and your minimum climb gradient, which varies between two engine aircraft. That's 2.4%. 3 engine aircraft is 2.7%, and 4 engine aircraft is 3%. So that's the kind of gradient that you're looking for with your critical engine failed while maintaining V2. Another interesting fact about V2 is that initial horizontal stabilizer setting that you get from either dispatch or that you figure out through your calculations there in your QRH, based on your takeoff thrust, your weight, the location of your center of gravity, and the flap setting that you use, that stabilizer setting is going to give you, you're basically trimming for V2. So that's your V2 trim. That setting is going to give you V2 in case of an engine failure. So you have that A's under your sleeve there. So V1, what's V1? V1 is your go, no-go speed, and the definition changes from country to country. But here in the States, the FAA says that V1 is the highest speed at which you can begin your rejected takeoff maneuver. So at V1 is the highest, is the last chance the pilot has to either close the throttles or put the brakes on or deploy speed brakes, or just basically commence the rejected takeoff maneuver. Now, under balanced field concept, if you accelerate to your V1 speed and at V1 you elect to discontinue the takeoff and do a rejected takeoff, then under, again, balanced field length theory or concept, you're going to stop at the very, very end of the runway, but on the runway nonetheless. If at V1 you have an engine failure, critical engine failure, and you decide to continue your takeoff, then you're going to cross the departure end of that runway if the runway is dry at 35 feet and if the runway is wet at 15 feet. So that is the balanced runway concept. Now, what happens if you abort your takeoff before V1? Then obviously you're going to stop the airplane before the end of the runway. And the lower the speed is at which you reject your takeoff, the more runway you're going to have left over at the end, right? Now, if you abort your takeoff after V1, which is a huge no-no, which is why airline pilots, when the pilot monitoring calls V1, we take our hand away from the throttle and we let go of the throttle because we're committed to takeoff. If you, for some reason, decide to abort your takeoff after V1, then you're not going to have enough runway to stop on that available runway, and you're going to overrun the end of the runway and basically, go off the deep end there. Now, what are the advantages of balanced field takeoff? Well, 8 out of 10 times, the takeoff runway available is longer than what you need for a given set of conditions. And so those conditions might be, maybe we're not that heavy that day, or maybe we have a very strong headwind component, or maybe the temperature outside is nice and cold and you have nice, cold, crisp, dense air. And so you don't need to request full power from the engines, and you are afforded the luxury to do what we've talked about several times on the show, which is a derated takeoff or an assumed temperature takeoff. So basically take off with less than full power. Why? Well, because since you have more runway than you need, you can use less power and let the airplane run on that available runway to a point where you reach that speed required to get the aircraft off the ground without needing all the power from the engines. Now, why would you take off with less power? Because statistically, engines are less prone or less susceptible to catastrophic failures if you run them at lower power settings. Also, there's, you're using less fuel, less noise, pollution. Obviously, you're saving wear and tear on the engines and all that stuff. And then how do we go ahead and do a derated type takeoff? And I think it's kind of, why not go ahead and discuss that here as well, because it's kind of interesting. We can do that by one of three ways. One is what's called the derated takeoff, which we just mentioned, and by derated, that means that you were only requiring either 90% or 80% of power from the engines, and that would be a 10% derate or 20% derate. The other way you have of doing that is by what's called the assumed temperature method. And this is an interesting one because by doing an assumed temperature method, all you're doing is you're tricking the engines into thinking that they are producing full takeoff thrust, but at a higher ambient temperature. So how does that work? Imagine you are sitting on an airport at sea level, 59 degrees Fahrenheit, 15 degrees Celsius, 2992 barometric pressure, inches of mercury. So that's international standard atmosphere. And under those conditions, no wind. Under those conditions, your engine produces 100,000 pounds of thrust. Now, all things being the same, and the only variable being the temperature, if the temperature went from 59 degrees to 80 degrees, now, since the amount of thrust that an engine produces is directly proportional to the air density, and air density is inversely proportional to temperature. Now, at 80 degrees, that same engine would no longer produce 100,000 pounds of thrust, but 98,000 pounds of thrust. And so if conditions are good for you and the weight and the runway available that you have for that takeoff is enough for you to trick your engines into thinking that it's 80 degrees outside when it's only 59 degrees outside, then that engine is going to think it's producing maximum thrust at 80 degrees, but it's only 59 degrees outside. Not only that, but it's producing less thrust with the same density air. So it's a very conservative type calculation. And the third way you have of doing a reduced thrust takeoff is by combining the two. You do a derated takeoff, and then on top of that, you tag on an assumed temperature takeoff. And then the maximum amount of reduction from takeoff thrust you can do by law is 25%. So that's the, benefit of doing balanced field takeoffs. On the other end of the spectrum, I am very, very familiar with always operating on the very, very edge of that balanced field theory because, for example, and I'm sure this is going to be the case tomorrow when I go to Quito. Quito is an airport that sits at 8,000 feet mean sea level, and when the temperature goes to the low 20s, the density altitude can get up to 10,000 feet or more sometimes. And so there's only a couple of things you can do to be able to take off with that full weight. Because the idea is to try to transport as much cargo as possible, because more cargo means more money, right? Makes the flight more profitable. And so if the weight is at a point where I can't get to my takeoff speed or to my V1 speed and make it a legal takeoff, I can play with a couple of variables. The first one would be, I guess, kind of wait for the wind component to be a more favorable type wind component. I guess I can take off with a higher flap setting, but then I got to be careful with that because in Quito, you have very, very close-in obstacles as far as mountains. And if you have an engine failure with a lot of flap hanging out, then that's not going to be good for your second segment, for your climb out segment. Another thing that I could do perhaps is take off with with my bleeds off. Basically, your bleeds are, what you do is you bleed air from the high pressure compressor in your engines to run your pressurization and air conditioning system. But during the takeoff portion of the flight, that's really not important because you're very close to the ground. And so if you can afford it to turn those bleeds off and have all the air that's coming in the engine go out the back of the engine and provide you with all the available thrust possible, then you're going to go ahead and do that. And if there's really no other way of getting around that takeoff, the only last, variable that you have is to take cargo off the airplane and make the takeoff a bit, make the airplane a bit lighter to be able to take off. And so another trick that I learned from an instructor very early on is when you're operating under balanced field takeoff theory, the second you set takeoff thrust, it's going to take you exactly 20 seconds to go from a standstill to 80 knots. And this happens every time. Under balanced field, you're on balanced field when you hit 80 knots at 20 seconds. And it works every time. And that's going to give you not only an idea that you made the calculations right, but that your acceleration is where it's supposed to be. So, yeah, good question. Interesting subject. And I hope I answered your question there.
I don't think you came close. I'm just going to say. I think
we don't even remember what was the question. I don't remember the question. No, I'm just kidding. It was an excellent discussion about balanced field length and the advantage of a balanced field.
Brilliant.
Love it.
All right. Let's see. Now, who was that? Justin was asking that question. So thanks, Justin, for your feedback. And let's move on.
Justin, I dare you to ask another question. Dare you.
Don't, yeah. Mike, our good friend Mike, the helicopter pilot, life flight helicopter pilot, he said, this is for you fixed wing guys and gals, for when you're on your next helicopter tour and your pilot keels over. It's kind of comical and kind of true. Enjoy. So he sent us a link to a WikiHow article about land a helicopter after your pilot has been killed. Not a very positive thing, Mike, but I guess good to know. Might want to look over there at this link just in case.
Yeah, it's a little tongue-in-cheek, but probably good information.
There's probably some truth in there somewhere,
there is,
right?
I think. Yeah. Interesting. It talks about the approach. I actually was just reading this. The approach, flying it like, a fixed-wing aircraft instead of coming straight down, trying to hover over a spot and die. It says, if you do that, you will crash and die. That is for experienced pilots only. It's like, okay, got it. Won't try that.
Okay. Let's see. We heard some feedback from Charath earlier in the episode, but he sent us some audio feedback, which we really prefer. And here we go. Let's listen to this. And right now, we're going to listen to this.
Hi there, Captain Jeff, Miami Rick, and Dr. Steph. This is Charath with some feedback about episode 193, where you were discussing about why it takes jet engines time, 8 seconds, I believe, to spool from their idle power to full power. The reason that happens is because of mechanical inertia. Any mechanical system has inertia built into it, which causes it to lag when there is a step change in input power into the system, or input force actually into the system. In this case, when you guys push the throttles fully forward, the engines obviously start to generate more torque, but it takes a while for the entire mechanical system to respond to that torque and spin up to the full speed as well. It's why that's 8 seconds, I wouldn't really know, but I suspect there's just something to do with how they want to make it predictable for all for different engines or something like that. Anyways, that's all I had in terms of feedback. Before I go, I wanted to leave you guys with one news headline that I thought would be really funny if we ever saw it or heard about it on a news channel, and I wouldn't be surprised if it shows up actually very soon. Anyways, the headline, Captain Jeff, you must ready your breaking news bumper for this. The headline is, Flatulent Pilots Violate Sterile Cockpit Rule. There you go. Amazing headline. Keep up the good shows. I hope you guys have fun flying your flights, and I look forward to hearing from you guys very soon. Bye.
What do you say? Flatulent pilots, something or other. I don't know.
Violate sterile cockpit rules.
Yeah, I was just going to play.
I would do it.
Thank you, Troth, for your audio feedback and your sense of humor. We always appreciate that. This was sent in by someone. I just don't remember who it was. Hang on. Let's see. Brittany. Brittany sent this in. She said, I just want to let you know that there is new Atlanta scenery out for Microsoft Flight Simulator X. Is it Microsoft Flight Simulator X or Microsoft Flight Simulator 10?
I think it's 10.
Is it like OS X? You don't say OS X, you say OS 10.
I think it's 10 because X is Roman number for 10.
Yeah. Okay. There are two separate products.
Yeah.
FSX. Okay. The first is Imagine Sim Atlanta 2016. It's got a faithful recreation of the terminal and even Acme headquarters, although they misspelled Acme. And she has a link to that. And then the second is Reality Sims Atlanta. It's basically a photorealistic terrain for most of Metro Atlanta. Also, for the first time, an accurate representation of downtown, right down to the CNN ads on the buildings near the CNN Center. It's astonishing. Your neighborhood's probably included. I don't know if they went all the way up to Roswell, but you never know. So thank you, Brittany, for that info, and we'll put a link to that imaginesim.com link in the show notes. Continuing, that we had some from Ryan the Champ Flyer. He sent in some T-shirt ideas, which I love. They are kind of old-fashioned flying boat images, and one of them has "That's What She Said" on it. It looks like a tropical scene with a flying boat. I love flying boats, and it's a really beautiful image. And maybe we can have some artistic community member, come up with something that looks just like this, but it's not a copyrighted image, and maybe we can get some T-shirts made with this. But I'd love to wear a shirt like that. So thank you.
Yeah, make sure the
Ryan.
one that says that what you said has a Zeppelin on it.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Rick. Let's see.
Noted.
We always
your input is noted. Thank you.
Yeah, it's noted. Not necessarily appreciated, but it's noted. We have some more audio feedback from Klaus. So let's see. Take it away, Klaus.
Hello, Captain Jeff and cohorts. I thought I would finally record some comments for you as I've been listening for a while. Strangely, your show keeps me awake for the slow afternoons at work. I occasionally hear you talk about stick shaker. I'm thinking this is rather unusual for heavy metal airplanes, because I have experienced stick shaking gliders I used to fly. What happens is, as the glider stalls, the laminar flow over the wing tears off, so to speak, from the aft edge of the wing and moves forward. The resulting turbulence makes the elevator control surface shake, and the pilot feels that as a shaking stick. Eventually, the laminar flow is completely gone, and one wing loses lift before the other and drops, inducing the spin. You watch that for a minute and then give water in the opposite direction to stop the spin. Then pull up slowly not to chair of the elevator. So that's how gliders experience stick shake. Thanks for the great shows. Clear skies and tailwind.
Well, that's real stick shake, or real stick shaker. But what we experience and refer to in our airline transport pilot flying world is an actual little motor, like a vibrator, that's connected to the actual yoke of the airplane and actually physically shakes the airplane. But it's not due to aerodynamic forces on the controls, but it's actually just a little, mechanical motor that's giving us the indication that we're getting close to stall. Right, Rick? Oh, are we having problems with
on
internet? Is it
Oh.
just me, or is it
No,
Rick?
it sounded Skypey.
No, we're
Me
okay.
too?
No, just Rick.
Yeah, it's everybody. Everybody's. Is it just me Skyping, or
I think
is
it's
it
you.
everybody?
Even though I'm on hotel bandwidth, it's actually pretty decent. It's like almost 10 up and down.
Jeff sounds fine
So-
to me.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so must be me then.
Come back.
By the way, if you're watching the Blab video, apparently you can get up to at least 25,231.
I think those are
Props.
artificially inflated numbers.
Gosh, I really did think
Thanks, Captain Nick.
that they're trying to see how high it can actually go.
Keep them going. Keep them going. It's not terribly
Apparently-
distracting or anything.
Dr. Steph is the it's not distracting at all. Dr. Steph is obviously the most popular. Rick apparently is in second place, 3501. I'm in third place, and then I'm sorry, Arash. You're not a regular, so
That's okay.
you're a respectable amount of props, though, I have to say.
Oh yeah, that's no shabby number there. 1345.
Oh, there we go. Dr. Steph is back. Good deal.
You sound a lot
do I
better
sound
now.
a little better now?
You
or-
look clear
Yeah.
too.
Okay, good deal. Awesome. So the stick shaker for us, at least in the airplanes that I've flown, there's a little two little yellow tick marks on your artificial horizon called the pitch limit indicator that it's basically going to show up when the flaps are out of the up position. And basically what those are there for are there to just basically tell you that if you get the pitch up to that angle, then that's when your stick shaker is going to activate. And also those pitch limit indicators will show up when you are flying, very, very heavy and you're banking. And those will show up as well. Because remember that when you bank, you're trading some of your vertical component of lift for horizontal component of lift. And so in order to bank and maintain altitude, or obviously to climb, you need to increase your angle of attack. And if as you increase your angle of attack to your critical angle of attack, then that is going to induce a stall. And so that pitch limit indicator is there to tell you, hey, if you get up to this pitch, then you are going to get a stick shaker. And there's also a device called a stick pusher, which is there to, basically push the stick forward and try to, fly away from that stall condition there. But certainly not good to get that mid-flight. Kind of scary. It's happened
if you're in a
and
if you're in
turbulent
Colgan 3407 when that's all happening and it's actually pushing forward, you just with all your strength you pull it back and you do the opposite.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And turn.
Not a good idea.
Well, I was just thinking too in the in the glider, it just sounds like it's taking advantage of that kind of natural buffeting that you get before the stall on approach to stall.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know why it's just transmitted through the stick there, but that's one of your first indications that you're coming up to a stall if you feel that buffeting, especially in smaller aircraft. So.
Yeah, I still want to experience soaring or gliding one of these days. I think that would be a lot of fun. Arash, have you had experience in a glider?
Yeah, actually, a couple weeks back, I went up with a buddy of mine who's a glider pilot, and it's interesting. Staying behind that tow plane is probably one of the hardest things when it's bumpy up, and the biggest thing I thought was just the lift to drag ratio those gliders have is incredible, right? You think with an engine out on a little Cessna, you're immediately looking for a place to put it down in, but with a glider, I mean, you're at 5,000 feet, you can stay up there for quite a while, which was pretty intriguing. Just riding the currents, and you get more of a feel for flying that way, I think. It was a great experience. We did spins, we did barrel rolls. It's pretty agile plane. Yeah,
that's cool.
Super cool.
Yeah, I didn't realize you did spins in a glider, but apparently that's what happens. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
How's everybody doing? Do we need a physiological break, or are we okay?
I think Rick went to check on his internet connection.
Yeah, maybe somebody in his house is watching Netflix or something.
Pirating the bandwidth.
So let's see here. Let me see what's next on the. There are a couple. You're good? Okay, me too. There are a couple of pieces of feedback I definitely want to make sure that we get on today's show. We're obviously not going to get to everybody's feedback on this one, but I want to get some of them. So let's see here. Are we ready for the old curmudgeon?
I guess. Jeez.
Do we have to listen to that? All right. Let's see here. Wait a minute. That's not it. Good thing we're on a break and I'm editing all this out.
Good deal.
Are you? I'm going to listen back to see if this gets edited out.
It will.
It will.
Yeah, because I'm going to make a mark right here. I think. There we go. Where is that? I know he sent us some feedback.
I saw it.
Yeah. No, there it is. You're looking for the which one are you looking for? For want of a nail, or
no? There was another.
There's another
curmudgeon.
One. It's old.curmudgeon engineers.
Yeah. Oh, there it is. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh shoot. Okay, I'm gonna have to do it this way. I'm gonna have to go over here, and I'm going to have to do the echo switch. So hopefully this won't screw everything up. Okay, so don't anybody say anything. Okay, and just listen to this.
Captain Jeff, Miami Rick, the lovely Dr. Steph, and the amazing APGs. It's the old doc pilot here. There's a little bit of feedback. I'm going to call it for the want of a nail. Big Ron gave me a little message on Twitter after he spotted a video that came up very recently on airlive.net, and it concerned Virgin Atlantic A340 -311, so a 300 series. Registration GV Sky. 5th of November, back in, I think,
That is not the one I was expecting to play. Sorry.
Try again. Try again.
So how's it? Are you guys echoing?
Yep.
Okay.
I'll stop. I'll stop myself again.
You know what? Shoot.
How come you had to turn the echo button on for that one?
Because I was playing it on I was playing it on my laptop and not my iPhone. But I think I remember now what I had to do to make this work. So let me go back to this. In the meantime, everybody can take a commercial break.
So this beer is fantastic. I'm drinking that New Belgium Ben and Jerry's collaboration.
Ooh,
salted caramel brownie brown ale.
I need to try it. Is it sweet?
Not terribly. It's a little sweet. It tastes more.
So kind of like me.
They have coffee. Yeah, exactly. It has more of like a coffee flavor to it, I think, than anything else. Actually, It's good though. I like it.
Nice.
Wonder what my 6.25%. Okay,
that's not bad.
Not bad.
Well, I'm still having trouble. Oh, here it is. Okay. Oh, I'm going to do a lot of editing on this one. Thank goodness I'm going to be off for a few days. Here we go. The old curmudgeon.
Captain Jeff, Miami Rick, the lovely Dr. Steph, and the fantastic APGers. It's the old curmudgeon here. And today's subject are engineers. We love them, don't we? We absolutely love them. They're great blokes. They work tirelessly scrounging out the food carts in order to get our jets back up and running in a short term. They're always there with a grand quip and a little wink and it'll do one more trip, Skipper. So really, honestly, they're my second favorite people in the world, perhaps after air traffic controllers. So on a quick turn, I get in, take a scan over the tech log to see various snags that have been raised with the following remarks. Byte test carried out satis. By the way, guys, the T in byte is test, so it's not a byte test, it's byte carried out satis. No fault found. Please report further next sector. Known history. Within tolerances. Well, that's just a few of my favorites. You guys got any doozies?
So, do you, Miami Rick? Got some doozies?
Oh, you kind of put me in the spot there. I'm sure I have some. I just can't remember, any off the top of my head. But
here's one that it always reminds me of that thing that we've seen in our emails and on the web. Supposedly write-ups from a FedEx airplane logbooks, and then actually, I think if you look on scopes.com, it goes all the way back to like World War II. And anyway, here's an example of some of these write-ups and then what the mechanic did to sign off the write-up. For instance, evidence of leak on right main landing gear, and then the corrective action was evidence removed. Here's a good one. The write-up by the pilot was something loose in the cockpit. The mechanic corrective action is something tightened in cockpit.
Yes.
Let's see. One of my favorites is number 3, engine missing. Write-up corrective action. Engine found on right wing after brief search. So, of course, it was an old piston, probably a recip, radial or something that was missing. Finally, mouse in cockpit, and then the corrective action, cat installed.
Nice.
Perfect.
Any other write-ups that you can I can't think of anything quite humorous.
I don't have any good ones. I'm sorry.
The thing that really bugs me is that I always see very, very poor grammar, and they'll say something is broke, like the
door's broke.
Something is broke, and I'm going, no, it's broken.
That's okay. One time I came across a chair in a hospital hallway that someone had placed out there, and attached a handwritten sign. It said "Broketon" with a D.
Oh, Broketon.
Yes.
Wow.
No joke, I have a picture of that. Someone honestly wrote that down and thought it was correct.
Wow, that's a deep
I got
South
the
for
idea,
you.
but still.
That makes pilots really look
That's
smart.
someone working in a hospital.
Wow.
That is scary. Hopefully it's not a doctor but it wouldn't surprise me.
Have you seen our handwriting?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Could be, huh?
I don't know.
Let's see. Micah, I'm going to play you have a couple pieces of audio feedback, but one in particular I definitely want to play before we end today's show. But this one I'll do first from Hillel. And he says, who said ATC communications are all work and no play? I heard this on the comms while flying with a friend. It would have been an out the nose moment had I been drinking my coffee or something. The attached file has been edited to only include balloon-related discussion. It might sound a bit stilted if you're expecting to hear instructions or responses between calls. And so thank you for the editing process, Hillel. And let's hear what he sent live ATC communications.
Approach Southwest 3022. Yes, sir. We just passed underneath a group of balloons, about 12, 15 of them, just right 30 seconds ago.
Okay. They were above you, and it was just like regular, like Mylar balloons?
Sure were.
Okay, thanks. We'll pass it on.
So it's Southwest 8602 out of 1000 descending anthem 2. Southwest 8062 or 8602, Roger. And now we had some report of some balloons, just Mylar balloons, just around the fins intersection of 6,000 feet. So we'll keep an eye out. Southwest 8602.
Southwest 174 is out of 10 for Ford descending via the what is it?
Trish. Southwest 174, Roger. We've had some balloons reported in the air at over the fins intersection at about 6,000 feet. Just regular kind of rubberized balloons.
Yeah, it sounds like lately we had troubles with big balloons floating around right here. A big one too.
Yeah, well, the ones by fins aren't quite as big as the other.
Yeah, like $10 million too.
Southwest 8602, did you see anything?
You did not, Southwest 8602.
Southwest 174, did you see any balloons in the area?
No, sir, we're looking though, Southwest 174.
Okay, thanks. Southwest 1029, contact Baltimore Charlie 109.4.
19.4, Southwest 1029, and we also didn't see any balloons.
Have you all seen groups of Mylar balloons before?
I did one time at about 3,500 feet. Yeah.
I've seen them too.
Very surprising. You're like, oh, balloons.
Yeah. And if you suck one of those things up in your engine, it can't be a good thing.
No, I can't say that I have.
No?
No, I haven't seen it.
They're like standing still. You go by and you go, what was that?
Yeah, you go, whoa, what was that?
You just have to be looking in the right area as you go by.
I've seen buzzards fly real close to my flight deck windows, and you know I've seen them fly so close that I've wondered whether I've hit them with wings or or engines or stabilizers or anything. But that I've seen quite a bit. But balloons, no, I can't say that I have.
My other favorite was immediately upon landing, looking out the window and seeing a deer standing right on the edge of the runway looking at us. I was like, thank goodness they're over there and not here.
Oh, but it wasn't in the air, was it?
No, it was not in the air. That would have been very surprising.
Yeah.
Attached to a group of Mylar balloons.
Christmas time.
Yeah. Coming up.
You can see those little deer, kind of reindeer, Okay. It's getting to be that time of year. Well, I'd like to play this bit of feedback from one of our APG community members, Micah. And here we go.
Community.
Oh, let me try that again.
1. I think I got it. I think I understand. What is it I understand? Well, I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure that you helped me figure it out. Now, you know I love air.
Okay. I just got a message from Micah in the chat room. This will all be edited out. Here, let me mark this. He said, I need to read the intro. Okay, thank you. So here's the intro from Micah. So it's Thursday night, Friday morning after you recorded episode 195. I've been fighting a cold for the past week, and I've been drinking hot green tea to keep my coughing to a minimum and my lungs clear. I drank about a quart and a half over the 3 hours of the show, and guess what I learned? There's caffeine in green tea. Yeah, a lot of it, Micah. So I'm awake, and I don't want to be. You and I just finished a short email correspondence, and if you'll recall, I'm waxing philosophically. Let me try that again. I'm waxing philosophically. It's now 2 o'clock local, 7 o'clock Zulu, and I can't sleep. I hadn't heard the score of the Thursday night American football game, so I turn on the rerun and watch it in bed. I'm exhausted, but on a caffeine high. It's been 10 hours since I last took some acetaminophen, which is, now, Dr. Steph, can you read that word?
Yes, paracetamol. Paracetamol is how it's pronounced.
Paracetamol, thank you. For those of you in the UK. So I swallow a couple of tablets and try to relax. I just want to sleep. It's now 2:30 local, 7:30 Zulu, in case Rick needs the conversion.
Thank you.
And Micah says, you're welcome. And an idea for a story jumps into my head, what I think is a good one. Now, remember, I'm waxing philosophically, something that tends to happen in the wee hours. And being an old guy, I know that there's a seed of a good idea there someplace. Well, maybe not a seed, but the idea of a seed, a spark of some sort. As a longtime writer and sometimes teacher of writing, I know that if I don't get that spark to tinder soon, I'll lose it. If I don't start writing before I go to sleep, there won't be anything to write. So at 0300 hours local, I climb out of bed, get in front of my keyboard, and this happened.
A community of passion and the passion of community in 3, 2, 1. I think I got it. I think I understand. What is it I understand? Well, I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure that you helped me figure it out. Now, you know I love airplanes and flying. You may even know that both my parents shared those feelings, even though I didn't know my mother loved airplanes and flying until her later years. That's when I learned she really had a passion for it all her life. Someplace there's a picture of her, taken in 1933. At only 3 years old, she's standing in front of a gate at Floyd Bennett Field, at some yet-to-be-identified aircraft. In her latter years, when we would drive down Route 95, parallel to the runways of EWR and PHL, she would get so excited to see a big hulking jetliner turn into a graceful bird that she would almost giggle like a kid again. But that's not what I'm talking about here. What am I talking about? I'm still not sure, but I'm getting to it. My Uncle Ralph moved to Florida when I was 13 years old. I never got to know him during my first 13 years. I mean, I knew I had an Uncle Ralph, but I don't think I ever spoke to him, and not sure I ever saw him again until I was 55. It wasn't for any special reason we didn't talk or meet. I wasn't in Florida very often, and the few times I was there, well, he was doing something else. When I was 55, I went to Florida with my mother, and while she was visiting with her sister, my Aunt Jerry, I visited with Uncle Ralph. I found out he was a pretty terrific guy. He was a Marine, well discharged in the 1950s, but once Marine, well, you know. He served post-war in the Mediterranean on board the aircraft carriers USS Carl C. and Franklin D. Roosevelt as an NCO, reporting directly to an admiral. How did he get that great duty? Because he shot marksmen with his Marine-issued 1911 .45 caliber pistol on Parris Island. The admiral wanted someone by his side with that kind of skill. I purchased a 1911 while I was in Florida during that visit and showed it to Uncle Ralph. It had been at least 50 years since he held one, and his eyes kind of teared up. He picked it up like an old friend and moved into his old shooting stance. It was like watching ballet. A few minutes later, he closed his eyes and field stripped that handgun and then reassembled it, never opening his eyes. All muscle memory from over 50 years ago. I wish you could have seen the look on his face. Uncle Ralph was happy. He was a 20-something-year-old kid again. I found out Uncle Ralph was a self-taught auto mechanic by trade. You know, the kind of mechanic that since he was a kid had taught himself everything there was to know about cars. He loved cars. He was also the kind of guy that could fix anything. A transmission, a coffee pot, a lawnmower, a refrigerator, it didn't matter. If it broke, Uncle Ralph could fix it. I learned that if Uncle Ralph couldn't fix it, whatever it was time to throw it out and get a new one. In just a short amount of time, I learned that my Uncle Ralph was amazing. We became more than distant family. We became friends. I told him that he never should have moved to Florida and that he shorted me when he did. Shorted me? Uncle Ralph didn't take kindly to that. He always paid his debts in full. So I explained. I told him I was shortchanged, that he owed me 40 years of Uncle Ralph. After that visit, we would talk a few times a week on the phone. We did our best to make up for the 40 years we missed together. But unfortunately, Uncle Ralph was only able to give me 4 of those 40 years. But that's okay. I plan to have a lot more time with him and quite a few other people when it's my turn to visit them wherever they may be now. Now, where am I going with this? Well, I'm still not sure, but bear with me. I have no interest in golf and know nothing about it. I know there's a tee, a driver, a putter, something called a bogey. I don't know. Never really cared. I guess when it comes to golf, I've always been subpar. Uncle Ralph, on the other hand, loved golf. He collected wooden shafted golf clubs. He was a golf pro. He could refit and refurbish any golf club to better than new. He was a great player. He loved to watch golf, loved to play golf, and loved to talk about golf. And Uncle Ralph could talk about golf for hours. And you know what? When Uncle Ralph talked about golf, I loved to listen, and I was interested. Not because it was golf, but for two reasons. One, it was Uncle Ralph talking, and if he wanted to talk, I wanted to listen. We were catching up on 40 years. And two, while I didn't share his passion and enthusiasm for golf, we did share a passion and enthusiasm for passion and enthusiasm. I felt the same way about football until my brother and mother got me interested in it about 8 years ago. And I could have cared less for baseball until my friend Steve truly tutored me on the subject and taught me the art involved. Recently, I came to understand a bit about what it must have been like for Uncle Ralph to talk to me about golf. A few of you were there when it happened, at the Udvar-Hazy Center. My brother and my niece drove up from Richmond, Virginia to meet me there. We were walking around together, and I was spewing out facts about some of the aircraft. No, I sure wasn't Rickipedia-like, and certainly not Vander Hoofian, for those of you who know who and what I'm referring to. But I guess I was Micah-pedic, more like an old shoe than a book of knowledge. But you know what? My niece Hannah enjoyed hearing what her old fart of an uncle had to say about those airplanes. I was fortunate in that she told me so. Even more fortunate when my brother Rick said he enjoyed it too. We had shared that passion and enthusiasm for passion and enthusiasm. And I think that's what I'm getting at here. That's what the airline pilot guy is all about. We share a passion about aircraft and flying. Maybe more importantly, we all share a passion and enthusiasm for passion and enthusiasm. We found we have a lot of things in common. What are we talking about in the chat being recorded? Sure, we talk about aircraft and we talk about flying. But we also talk about kebabs, burgers, pizza, clam chowder, lobster, all sorts of food. We talk about travel and we talk about beer. We talk about Seinfeld, Monty Python, music, and more cowbell. We found out we have other common interests and listen to some of the same shows like Leo Laporte, Clark Howard, Hey Techies, and Omega Tau, for example. If I try to name them all, I'll leave some out, and I don't want to insult anyone. We found out we were a community created by Captain Jeff of Acme Airlines. Now, Jeff, I bet you never expected that to happen. So you can take the acclaim or the blame, your call, but thank you. So for the airline pilot guy community here in Portland, this is your main man, Micah, thanking Captain Jeff and the whole community for being what and who you are.
Brilliant!
I love that.
Awesome. Thank
That
you,
was
Micah.
amazing.
He's such a pro, isn't he?
Oh, yeah.
That great national public radio kind of vibe to his sound, and I love that. Thank you very much. That was very special to me.
Yes, you put down the alternate title in the chat room, the caffeine flatulent philosophy.
Yeah, I didn't think that really applied, but Micah, you're really an asset to our community. We really do appreciate you and all you do for us. And especially that time that you picked up my co-pilot and I, and we went to that great seafood place and not far from where you live in Portland, Maine. Beautiful country, by the way. And that again is Micah, our main man. And we're going to have him on the show one of these days as a guest host. So we
Absolutely.
met Micah in person. Well, I actually met him before you guys did, but at the Udvar-Hazy Center, which he referred in that bit of feedback there, and along with several other members of that august group of podcasters, the Airplane Geeks, and we had a great time together in Washington, actually Virginia, I guess. Okay, and in that area up there. And he sent some other feedback. So as long as we're doing the Micah thing, we might as well continue. And I'm scrambling to find it.
It's
But
earlier. Oh no, wait.
Yeah. So what I'm having trouble with here is that I'm so used to everything in a certain chronological order, and now I'm using an iOS device, and everything's backwards. So here we go. I found it. It says, "Hey, Captain Jeff, Miami, Rick, Dr. Steph, and Captain Nick, if you're there." Well, he's in the chat room, I think. Still, thought you might find this interesting, and then he sent a link to this website. And he talks about the fact that he said, now this is my kind of trading card. And it's called Real Airplane Cards. And he said, I can just imagine well, before I do that, let me tell you what Real Airplane Cards are. I guess Delta Airlines, one of the sister airlines of Acme, are actually making these trading cards out of real metal from airplanes. I think this first series is from the DC-9. And so instead of scrapping it and sending it back to the recyclers, they actually took some of this aluminum from the DC-9 and made some trading cards out of
They're
it.
gift
I haven't
cards,
seen
right?
them myself. Oh, they're gift cards. Okay. Thank you. And he said, now that's my kind of trading card. Who needs sports figures or baseball cards? Now we can have real airplane cards. And he said he even sent me a little bit of audio feedback here. Let's see.
Collect them, trade them with your friends. Be the first on your block to have them all.
Nice. Thank you.
Very nice.
That was a little hot. Here, I'll try that again.
Collect them, trade them with your friends. Be the first on your block to have them all.
Hey, Timmy, I got a DC-9. Oh, yeah, Bobby. Well, I have that one and a 727. I can't wait for the A310 to come out. I can hear them now, or the announcer now. Oh, I played this out of order. I'm sorry. I should have been to rehearsal. I wasn't. Anyway, so thank you, Micah. Did you guys look at the link to this?
Yeah.
And, see
And I've seen it from a couple other people, and it's been on Twitter too. Posted
Mhm.
a bunch. Very cool stuff.
Yeah, love
Yeah.
it. Really, really cool.
Well, thank you, Micah,
Great
for that.
marketing idea.
Yeah, fantastic. So let's keep on our roll of audio feedback. And let's see. There was a Twitter discussion not long ago, and someone was asking about an A340 incident from an airline named Virgin Atlantic. And I'm not sure how long ago it was. Do you guys remember?
The incident? He mentions when it was, I think.
Okay. Well, then let's let him tell us about the episode. And somebody in the chat room, on Twitter was saying, hey, maybe you could, enlighten us about this whole thing. So
Was it
take
Big
it away.
Ron asking? Yeah.
I think it was Big Ron. Yes. Now here's Captain Nick.
Captain Jeff, Miami Rick, the lovely Dr. Steph, and the amazing APGs. It's the old Doc Pilot here. There's a little bit of feedback. I'm going to call it for the want of a nail. Big Ron gave me a little message on Twitter after he spotted a video that came up very recently on airlive.net, and it concerned Virgin Atlantic A340 dash 311, so a 300 series, registration GV Sky, 5th of November, back in, I think, 97, so a good sort of, 18 years ago. 20 hours in the afternoon on runway 27 left at Heathrow, there was an accident. And he wondered if I knew anything about it and if I might perhaps chat about it. So that immediately made me think of the Benjamin Franklin quote, for the want of a nail, the shoe was lost. For the want of a shoe, the horse was lost. For the want of a horse, the rider was lost. For the want of a rider, the battle was lost. For the want of a battle, the kingdom was lost. All for the want of a nail. And that really is the theme that goes through this. So if you bear with me, I'm going to work through the Air Accident Investigation Board report. I just thought I'd mention that the front page of this has a little introductory letter which finishes I have the honour to be, sir, your obedient servant. Signed, the Chief Inspector of Air Accidents, which I always find rather quaint. He goes on to mention that this A340 has a conventional multi-wheeled gear consisting of 2 double bogies, supplemented by a center landing gear, which just a pair of additional wheels there to take some of the weight, gives it an increased takeoff and landing weight. And of course, up the front, there's a nose gear. This flight was a very ordinary flight from LA to Heathrow. There were 3 flight deck, 1 supernumerary flight deck, which undoubtedly opened his eyes that day, 13 cabin crew down the back, and only 97 passengers, so a bit of a quiet day. They pushed from stand 27 at LA, taxied out via Delta 9 and Echo, and departed from runway 24 left. Very short taxi, that. And the takeoff was completely ordinary, except the gear appeared to take a little longer than normal to retract. Now, unbeknown to the crew, during the first 1,500 feet of climb, there was a gear doors not closed warning and a system disagree warning. They had occurred, but they cleared before they were displayed, since they were inhibited until 1,500 feet. So the crew never knew those warnings had occurred, nor that they had cleared themselves. However, in the cruise, someone noticed that the number 6 wheel brake temperature had gone to amber XX, which meant that the aircraft wasn't receiving a signal from that brake temperature, which was on those aircraft a surprisingly common event. Everything went fine until 8 miles on finals for an ILS at Heathrow, when the gear was selected, and a little while later a left gear unsafe indication occurred. Funny old thing, the crew went around. Various attempts were made to cure the problem, to no avail. And finally, a flypast of the tower confirmed that the left main gear was only partially deployed and, quote, hanging in the bay, unquote. So partially open, but sort of stopped itself only a few inches, perhaps a foot, in its deployment. So what had happened? Well, due to a failure of the number 6 wheel brake torque rod, it was no longer attached at one end. Now, those brake units, which are termed heat packs, they're on a bogie, and they consist of rotating carbon plates, which are attached to the wheel, which when applied press against non-rotating carbon stators, which create a braking effect. So you squeeze them all together, it provides a lot of friction slows the aircraft down. The stators, the stationary plates, are prevented from rotating by linking the forward set to the ones behind by a brake torque rod. So just a pretty solid lump of steel joins the front brake unit to the back brake unit on the wheel in front of the wheel behind, and prevents any rotation of those stators, thereby allowing the wheel to have something to brake against. When this brake torque rod had become unattached, it was allowed to swing out of position. Unfortunately, this happened after retraction, where it became jammed against the top of a keel beam inside the gear bay, effectively jamming the gear in the up position. As it turned out, nothing the crew could have done would have freed it. So how did the crew handle this? After the initial go-around, the crew took radar vectors to the Bovingdon hold, not far away from London Airport, to troubleshoot. The captain was the pilot monitoring. He handled the radio on one box, talking to air traffic and the company on the other box, since they were in VHF range of their operations, whilst also briefing the cabin crew and the packs and coordinating the efforts on the flight deck. He gave tasks to his 2 first officers. There was a 4th guy on the flight deck, but being only supernumerary meant he was just doing one of his very first trips on the company, I suspect, and completely unfamiliar. So one of his FOs coordinated with the cabin crew and reviewed the manuals, while the other one flew the aircraft. The captain dealt with the QRH and the drills, and air traffic helped them by giving them a discrete frequency, so they didn't have to listen to any chit-chat. They could concentrate on what they were doing. In their attempts to free the gear, they reset the landing gear control interface units and other computers associated by pulling and resetting circuit breakers, and even going down into the avionics bay, not a normal procedure to cycle bits down there, but that was under the guidance of the ground engineers. They obviously recycled the gear using the gear lever. They used and, in fact, reset at one point the gravity lowering system to see if they could get it down using that. And they even maneuvered the aircraft using positive and negative GEOL to no avail. The captain rejected a suggestion that they might try and touch and go to shake the gear down, since it was not something he had ever been trained to do, and he was suspicious of the likelihood that they would do something successful just bounce the airplane on one gear. On reaching about 5.5 tons of fuel with the low fuel lights on, at this point, the captain refused an offer, very sensibly, to divert to RAF Manston, and taking control of the aircraft, he formally declared a mayday before commencing his final approach. The wind was southerly, 190 at 13 knots, and he was content with the runway allocation that Heathrow gave him of 27 left. Remembering it was the left gear that hadn't come down, and Heathrow quite sensibly decided that if the aircraft was going to swing off the runway, that was the safest runway to use. Now, a small note in the manual called the FCOM 3 had been spotted by the 3rd pilot, which stated that it was not permitted to land with the center line gear down, combined with an unsafe main gear. Now, of interest, this note was not in the Quick Reference Handbook, the QRH. Whilst they were actually on their final approach, he pointed out that after all the recycling they'd been attempting, they had ended up with the center gear down. So a final reconfiguration was necessary to get the gear back up and then lower it on the gravity extension system to get the correct configuration. In addition, the captain had decided not to follow the QRH drill for the final landing. In the flare, the drill required the crew to shut down all 4 engines. Now, the captain realized that doing this would rob all hydraulic power at a fairly vital point. So he had briefed his crew to shut down the outboard engines just before touchdown, followed by the number 2 engine, the inboard left-hand side as the wing dropped, then leave the number 3 engine until as long as possible. He lined the aircraft up on the right-hand side of the runway, realizing that the aircraft would probably slew to the left and he needed all the space he could get to keep the aircraft on the runway. He performed a gentle touchdown on the right gear with the left wing up a little. The aircraft unexpectedly pivoted on the main gear slightly, increasing the angle of bank and allowing the number 4 engine pod to briefly touch the runway in a great big shower of sparks. This was mainly due to an unexpected flight control lateral law change that occurred due to an on-ground detection conflict. So flight control computers weren't convinced the aircraft was on the ground, and so hadn't gone into the normal flare laws that we use when we land the aircraft. The aircraft finally settled onto the nose gear and then onto engines 1 and 2. There was a lack of braking on the right main gear, the one that was down, for 16 seconds, which did nothing to help the captain from maintaining directional control. This was discovered afterwards to be the BSCU, the brake control computer, going into aquaplaning mode because it didn't detect a spin up from the retracted gear. So it assumed that that gear must have been on ice and didn't activate the other brake until it suddenly worked out perhaps what was going on or a certain amount of time had gone by. However, despite that, Captain kept the aircraft on the runway. As soon as the aircraft came to a halt, the engine and APU fire bottles were discharged. There were minor friction fires, which were extinguished by the fire crews, and the aircraft was evacuated. Apart from 2 doors, which were a little slow to open, and 2 escape slides that required manual activation, the evacuation was exemplary. There were no fatal or serious injuries. 2 crew and 5 passengers received minor injuries. 14 crew and 93 passengers were completely uninjured. So, just to pluck a few things out of the findings, the crew carried out all possible procedures recommended by the manufacturer. The commander's decision not to divert was entirely prudent. The Quick Reference Handbook did not afford the crew the best information prior to carrying out such an emergency landing, and the commander's decision to amend the QRH was considered prudent and provided an improved prospect of a successful landing. So, the cause of all this? Well, let's go back to the beginning. For the want of a nail. Well, the cause of the failure was determined to be a fault in a cotter pin. You know, one of those tiny little pins you pop in through a hole in a shaft and then bend the ends out, and they form a barrier to stop a bolt perhaps from coming undone. You can buy 100 of them for about $10. The pin failed, and the castellated nut it was there to retain came off. The torque pin that the nut was supposed to retain fell out, allowing the torque rod to swing out into the gear bay, jamming the gear up. So, $10 for 100 of those? Well, I'm just trying to work it out. That would be about 10 cents each. A 10 cents cotter pin, well, there you go. So what of the captain? Well, he was one of the nicest guys you'd want to meet. A fine pilot. That year, he was actually the British aerobatics champion. A very quiet and undemonstrative chap, just the sort of guy we'd all want to be. He handled the emergency in an exemplary manner. And we all wished him well. I don't think he's still flying for Virgin now. But at that time, when the airline was probably only, I don't know, 11 or 12 years old, with probably around 13 or 14 airplanes, a hull loss would have probably sunk the airline. And his fantastic job meant that the aircraft have relatively few problems. I think they've replaced a couple of engines, obviously patched it up. It was back on the line and flying again in a few weeks and continued to do brave service until quite a few years later when it was sold on. Now, Airbus went on to make quite a few changes. They rewrote their QRH drill, which included turning off the anti-skid switch to allow braking straight after landing. And they, amongst other things, kept with the concept of progressively shutting down the engines in exactly the manner that the captain on that day had decided to do, so that hydraulic and electric power would be available during the landing rollout, which just goes to show what a smart cookie that chap was.
Wonderful feedback. Thank you, Captain Nick, for that. And does that not just emphasize the importance of us knowing a little bit about our systems?
Right.
Because
Well, it
that
kind
was
of goes
not
back to what we were talking about, a week or two ago with, do you have checklists for everything? Well, here's an instance where you do, but maybe it makes sense to amend, modify, use your brain a little bit, know the system,
Exactly right, and it goes back to what Dr. Steph was talking about us knowing our aircraft, knowing the systems, and applying that knowledge. Thinking outside the box. And you can only think outside the box if you know enough to be able to look at things from that perspective. So commendable, absolutely great, and thank you, Captain Nick, for that great feedback as always.
Yeah, the way you told the story was exemplary. Let's see. Nick, our friend just south of where I am here and very close to Rick in Miami. Nick Acosta sent a link to a video on Vimeo, and it's the Cameron Air Show in, I believe, Missouri, not too far from Mike Rogers. The Cameron Air Show 2014. Great video with has some great clips in there of some of the acts in the air show. So you should check that out. Bruce sent some information about Microsoft Flight Simulator. He said, I enjoyed the APG team's reaction to the airliner flying guy. Oh, Bruce is the also known as the Sim Captain. He's the guy that sent in the audio feedback of the airliner flying guy show.
Oh, it was from Captain Jerry, though, right?
Yeah, Captain Jerry.
Yeah. Yes, I wonder how Captain Jerry's doing. I wish we'd.
I don't know, but I hope that we get to hear from Captain Jerry.
I hope we hear back from him soon.
I wonder what he's been up to. He said, I'm sure that Captain Jerry will allow me to send you another clip of his show in the near future. Well, we're looking forward to that, Bruce, if you can talk to him. However, my feedback is really about Microsoft Flight Simulator. I sympathize with Barton's experience that he gave, also in episode 188. I, too, have caused millions of dollars worth of virtual damage and untold virtual human tragedy when the automation got ahead of me. Although my mistakes might have not been witnessed, as I do not fly for a virtual airline. In the early days, I wondered why my jumbo was falling out of the sky when I was landing at 140 knots with no flaps. I have made mode selection errors as well. In addition, I have often left the auto throttle switched on when landing instead of clicking it off when the autopilot is about at 600 feet. I poke fun at myself and my fellow flight simmers in one of my posts, quote, Microsoft Flight Simulator could save your life. We'll put a link to that in the show notes. Interestingly, there have been many debates on your show concerning which flight simulation software is the best and how close to reality they are, etc. Well, on YouTube, I came across a real-life commercial pilot who swears by Microsoft Flight Simulator 2004. In this video, he claims that he can get a 95% comparison to the real airplane that he flies. He also includes a video on his channel showing a typical day in his life for those who doubt that he is for real. Catch you later, as Nick would say. Bruce, the Sim Captain. So thank you, Bruce, for that. And we'll put those links in the show notes. Steve Ward, wrote in. He said, a recurring theme I've been hearing over the past several shows is consistency and discipline in the cockpit. The more I listen to APG and learn about life on your side of the cockpit door, the greater appreciation I have for this. In fact, I've begun to apply these principles for my staff at my day job in the banking and finance world. Starting with APG 187 and Cutter 777, which struck approach lights on departure at Miami, I am at a loss on how the pilots did an intersection takeoff, even with the taxiway confusion that Miami Rick noted. When doing my private pilot training many years ago, 3 things were imprinted upon my brain that are of no value to you as a pilot. Okay, so the 3 things that are of no value to us is altitude above you, runway behind you, and air in your tanks.
And there's one more. Fuel when you're on
that?
fire.
Oh, yeah. Fuel's good unless you're on fire. You're right. Even in my Cessna 172, I always taxi to the very end of the runway, even at 11,000-foot BGR, which I fly to occasionally. A quick anecdote on BGR, I did my private check ride there and did 3 touch and goes without leaving the runway. Several years ago, I'll admit that I was definitely taken aback when an EasyJet pilot did an intersection takeoff in a 737 from GVA. Yes, everything went fine, but what if we had to do a high-speed abort? The safety margins may have been compromised. So, Captain Jeff, Miami Rick, are there ever times when either of you do intersection takeoffs? Oh, yes. A lot of times you go to airports like John F. Kennedy, and that's just the way they operate there. They'll use Kilo Echo intersection for 3-1 left and not send you all the way to the end. So I'm not saying that, I'm saying if you have a choice, I always opt for the longer runway. But if the operation is such that they're using this as a standard point for takeoff, then I do intersection takeoffs all the time.
And it goes back to what we were talking about. If your accelerate stop distance required, is less than that takeoff runway available, then you can certainly do it. And as Captain Jeff said, if the airport, if that's the way the airport operates, then it's kind of how you have to do it. And the runways are going to be long enough for you to be able to do that. Now, if I had a choice of whether to take off at an intersection or using the entire runway at an airport, like, for example, let's use Quito again. Intersection Alpha 1 is an intersection that a lot of airliners use, A320, 737 type aircraft, and, lighter loaded, heavy category aircraft. They'll use Alpha 1 as well. But in my case, even if I'm light, I'll use the entire runway because, as you said, if something happens, I have that extra runway ahead of me. And also, because I have more runway available, then I'm able to take off with less power, which saves my engines and keeps them from possibly failing. So it's all about.
It goes back to thinking like a lawyer too. You're going to get that if something does happen and you get that question. Well, I see here, you use that intersection takeoff. Why didn't you use the entire length of the runway available to you?
And then
what's your answer going to be?
Exactly, and then the Rickards are not going to fly when that question comes around. So just think as a lawyer, just be conservative and just be safe.
Yeah, and some people would say, well, taking an intersection takeoff is the same exact thing as using reduced thrust for takeoff, and I'd say no, that's comparing apples and oranges. You can't equate the two. That's just my personal opinion.
Well, right, because if you take Right, because if you're taking off from an intersection takeoff, that means that for you to be your accelerate stop distance required is getting closer to your takeoff runway available. So you're getting closer to balanced field takeoff. And the idea is, yes, balanced field takeoff is safe and it's legal and all, but if you have more runway available to you, then why not use it, or why not take off with less power, which would, as I said, save your engines from potentially failing and put you in a situation that you could otherwise avoid. So it goes back to that.
Right. Stephen goes on to say the consistency and discipline theme continued in 193 with regard to checklists. In that episode, there was much credence given to pointing at the item being checked as part of the pilot's cockpit discipline, something I do myself, especially on departure. A couple of weeks ago, I discovered a series of great aviation videos at jetstreamtv.net, and the pointing concept was highlighted by a KLM 777 crew in planning and executing a transatlantic flight from Amsterdam to John F. Kennedy International. One last note, for anyone who believes that planes just fly themselves, watch these Jetstream TV videos, and you'll get a taste and a flavor of the workload, the concentration, coordination that takes place on the flight deck for every flight, even with all that automation. Keep up the great work, blue side up, and hand fly whenever you can. Best, Steve Ward. So thank you, Steve, for the great feedback. And I'm just looking quickly here. I'm going to save some of these for the next episode. We got a picture from a Swedish Jim, and it's entitled "Finally Green." And I don't think we've played that yet on this show, so we need to get that going.
Nice. We're going green. We're going green. We're gonna take care of the earth. We're going green.
Now, in this case, going green is Swedish Jim wearing this green shirt, this T-shirt that has Acme Airlines on it. And so if you want to go green yourself, check out teespring.com/Acme shirt, as Swedish Jim did. He has a great selfie here. I'll put in the show notes. You all get a kick out of that.
It's a great
looking good.
Even
man.
the wall is green.
Yeah. It is. Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah.
Green
It's
one.
got a great expression on his face, too.
He looks so happy.
Let's see. Continuing on here. There's a reverse thrust. How are we doing with the time? Are we getting close to 3?
I have no idea.
Yeah, we're at like a 242, 240.
Yeah, that's about right.
All right, so it means that we're getting close to. Let's just do this one quickly, and then maybe another piece of audio feedback, and then we'll shut it down. Let's see. It's Mike Clark, Michael C. from Tennessee, sent in this. He said, "Esteemed aviator." Oh, this is to somebody else apparently. Oh no, he's talking to us. Okay,
he's talking to a rash.
Aviators. Okay. Would you be so kind as to further explain how reverse thrust is applied by the pilots during landing? I understand how reverse thrust works within or behind the engines themselves. Number one, when activating the thrust reverse levers in the deployed position, do you then have to advance the thrust levers forward to increase the power in said engines, or is this done automatically? I'm sure this function may operate differently across aircraft types. I think it does. If you do have to set the reverse power manually, what determines the amount of power applied? And then his second question, what determines how long reverse thrust is used? I assume it's by speed in combination with landing data, landing weight, runway length, runway conditions, etc. So, Michael, yes, we do. Well, every airplane that I've flown has some, I think all of them have had thrust reverse levers that are kind of mounted on top of the forward thrust levers. And so when you go into reverse thrust, you kind of reach over the top and you kind of hold on to these smaller levers, and then you kind of pull backwards. So you're not moving anything forward, you're moving them backwards toward the aft part of the aircraft. And then you set a certain power setting based on the conditions and it's going to depend on the airplane. Some airplanes, like for instance the MD-90, we just go into the idle reverse position to let the whole mechanical process happen. And then once you get to a certain point, there are some servos that unlock that allow you to put in more reverse thrust. And in that airplane, because it's a FADEC system, you can just put it all the way back, and then it will automatically set up the maximum reverse thrust for the atmospheric conditions and everything else. You don't really have to think about it. On the 88, on the other hand, using the Pratt & Whitney engines, it does not have a FADEC system, so it's all cables running from the actual throttle quadrant all the way back to the engines. We actually control the amount of thrust that's being applied when we're in reverse thrust. And we look for, in these engines, EPR settings, exhaust pressure ratio settings. And on a dry runway, then we look for a target EPR of about 1.6. If it's a wet or slippery runway, icing, winter time kind of conditions, when you have less than good braking action, then you're looking for a maximum of 1.3 EPR. And the reason for that, because the airplane that I fly, the engines are on the tail, and you have to be very careful about using too much reverse thrust, because if you use too much reverse thrust, it basically takes away the authority of the rudder and your directional control. So initially when you're landing, the airplane's still flying, basically. Even if you have the wheels on the runway, you're still flying the airplane, and you don't want to lose that directional control, especially until you get the nose wheel on the runway, and then you have a little bit of steering authority with the nose wheel. But for a good part of the initial touchdown and landing roll, you're getting your steering is still from that rudder in the back, and so you don't want to blank out the rudder by using too much reverse thrust.
Yeah. The way it works for us is kind of like the MD-90. Both the 767 and the 777 are basically FADEC equipped airliners. So just as Captain Jeff described, as soon as you touch down, you'll see the speed brake lever, move back. If it's been armed and deploy automatically, and then that's when you're on the ground. And then you bring the levers to the interlock position, and then you apply slide pressure. And while the translating sleeve slides back, and the blocker doors block the fan air. Once that procedure is all finished, then these micro switches release, and you're able to pull the thrust levers back. And for us, it's they're either on or they're off. There's no halfway point. We'll most of the time and under certain conditions, runways, over 9,000 feet, temperatures under 30 degrees Celsius, things like that. When that's the case, we're able and we're allowed to land. And in fact, it's standard procedure to land with idle reverse. Otherwise, we have to use full reverse thrust. That's kind of how it works for us. Did you know that there's certain airplanes though that I believe the DC-8 didn't have spoilers, like in-flight spoilers, so they would use the number 2 and number 3 reversers to increase the rate of descent. Mm-hmm. I think the Concorde did the same. And there's a Russian made airliner. I think it's the IL-62. It looks a lot like the VC-10, the Victor Charlie 10. And I've seen that airplane put the number 1 and number 4 engines. These are four-tail mounted engines. Number 1 and number 4 engines go into reverse during the flare before the airplane actually lands. That's pretty interesting. So it's interesting. Reverse thrust is more. I would say it's more effective at high speeds. Once you get the aircraft slowed down, then the brakes kind of take over, and that's why it's important for you to either manually or automatically deploy the spoiler panels, so that basically the wing stops generating lift and the weight of the airplane is on the wheels, and then that can get you stopped. So. Yeah.
Right. Captain Al, thank you. He's in the chat room saying, because we keep throwing out these acronyms like FADEC, and assuming that everybody knows what we're talking about, that's Full Authority Digital Engine Control. So basically, it's electronically controlled engines from the throttle quadrant. There's nothing physical actually going back to the engines, except for maybe a little tiny wire.
Yeah. And then how long do you keep them on? Well, at least in the airplanes that I've flown, and even more so, I'd say on the 777, because these engines are so big. Usually for us, by the time we get to about 60 knots ground speed, we'll start going from max reverse thrust to idle reverse, and so by the time we get to taxi speed, which is 30 knots ground speed or less, then the reversers will be stowed. And the reason why you don't want to have a high reverse thrust setting at low speeds is, well, you don't want that. You don't want the engine to absorb its own reverse thrust. That could cause compressor stalls and things like that. And then another thing is that that could also cause damage from foreign object debris. So you want to start stowing the reversers by about 60 knots ground speed.
And they're most effective at higher speeds anyway. So,
Exactly.
The initial effectiveness is immediately after you touch down and you're starting to lower the nose toward the runway, getting the reverse thrust out. And then toward the latter part of the landing roll, the most effective stopping mechanism are the brakes. So,
interestingly enough, for takeoff calculations and rejected takeoff and even landing calculations, reverse thrust is not factored in. So it's a bonus. So the aircraft is certified without reverse thrust. It's all wheel brakes and spoilers.
Exactly. And finally, let's close the show with one more last piece of feedback from our friend Dispatcher Mike. Oh, let me try that again. I have to unmute.
Hello, Captain Jeff and the APG crew for this episode. Just want to give some feedback from episode 195, and really a lot of it stems around what Captain Nick was saying about EFC's fuel and what Miami Rick talked about with redispatches. Captain Nick, I couldn't agree with you absolutely positively more that the EFCs in the United States are just a bunch of baloney that comes out, and controllers, honestly, I feel, really throw a number out there that's a wag so the pilots don't have to give them any updates or anything like that. I much like it better in Europe when a flight crew sends down, we have an EFC of 2310, and that's 7 minutes from now. Guess what? We know that they're going to be cleared in 7 minutes. It's a no-brainer. What happens in the United States, even with the Acme crews that get holding all the time and are used to these absolutely inflated EFCs, is they freak out And you, Captain Nick, with the Acme Red, who don't have regulatory dispatchers like we do here. One of the first things a crew does in the United States, at least the good ones that we like, they send us down and say, hey, we're holding over this fix, we're at this altitude, this is our fuel on board, this is our EFC. And that way the dispatcher, who also has a little skin in the game as well, can also plan numbers. And we'll get that and we'll plug it into our computer and we'll give them numbers from the crews, numbers, basically how much can they hold, numbers from their current fix to this alternate, this fix to this alternate, and so on. So when you're a dispatcher, and I'm looking at this, and I call this really proactive dispatching, and you're doing a good job, you're following your flights, you understand everything that's going on your desk, and you know that a flight's going to start holding. So you send a message up to your crew, hey, just a heads up, they're starting to hold over, let's say, Rome. They're starting to hold over Rome. Flights are taking one turn and they're coming in. So the flight comes in, they're further up on the arrival, they get that heads up, they get to Rome, and all of a sudden ATC gives them a 50-minute EFC. And they come back, and the crew usually comes back and says, well, ATC is saying it's 50 minutes. And it bugs me. I'm like, yeah, I understand ATC's saying 50 minutes, but hey, look, I'm on your team here. I'm telling you, you're going to get one turn in the hold. You'll be into Atlanta. The last 50 flights did the same thing. So trust me, it's kind of that whole thing too. Now, you have to, Nick, on the case of fuel, man, if all of the Acme Red crews carry that much fuel, I think all of you could have a job at Acme, because they are trying so hard to drive our fuels lower. And I could kind of hear it in Captain Jeff's voice that he was kind of shocked at the fuel load, because we generally carry a lot more fuel at Acme, and a general transatlantic flight like you do from Heathrow to Kennedy, our flights are going to carry about 35-40 minutes of hold fuel going into New York, because there's that once off of, you don't know what's going to happen in the New York airspace. And if there's a day where there's thunderstorms in the New York area, or if it's a snowstorm, we're carrying an hour. We're easily carrying an hour extra worth of gas. And yes, we know it's going to cost more, but we know we're going to get in. So that's what I wanted to say about that. And finally, Miami Rick did a great job explaining the redispatch process and did a wonderful job with it. I have nothing to add about his explanation. I just wanted to say and comment that we actually had to do it the other day. We had flights coming northbound into our major hub, and they were released without an alternate, because at Acme's policy is, if the redispatch fix is within 6 hours of the destination, you don't need an alternate, because you're carrying an alternate for your redispatch airport. You can carry no alternate. So what happened is the flights were coming northbound. The forecast was incorrect, and there was now a ceiling below 2,000 feet, meaning they had to have an alternate. We had a flight that was overburning. They did not have enough gas at the redispatch point to continue on to their destination airport, so we made a stop in Orlando, got some gas, and we're out of there in 30 minutes and continued our merry way. So that whole redispatch process worked like a gem. It was great for the dispatcher, because they had to do nothing. They saw absolutely nothing. They didn't have to send any new numbers up to the crew or anything like that, because it was all included in their original paperwork. So that's what I have to say. You guys have a good rest of your show. I enjoy it, and keep up the great work.
Well, thank you, Dispatcher Mike. And you need to check out his, he used to be just not just a blogger, but he was a blogger, Flying and Life, his blog, flyingandlife.com. We'll put a link in the show notes. But he started doing podcasts, and he's on episode 5 now. And let's see, what was his first one here? Episode 1 was back, I'm trying to scroll down to get it, but sometime earlier this year. And he took a long vacation in October. Looks like September is when he started. So he's up to episode number 5. You should subscribe to his show. Again, that's flyingandlife.com. So thank you, Dispatcher Mike, for your perspective on all this. Anything else, guys?
No, that was great. Thank you, Dispatcher Mike, for telling me that I did a good job. I basically pulled that off the top of my head
Thanks
there.
for
I wasn't sure that
Miami Rick.
I wasn't sure that I
Thanks
Giving him
a lot
encouragement and
for that. Always really good that you encourage him. All right. Well, it's time now to put this one to bed, and because most of us need to go to bed.
And
and I gotta go
fly.
fly.
You need to go fly. Yeah, take a little nap and then go flying. So thanks everyone for listening to the show and subscribing via iTunes, subscribing via YouTube, etc. Thank you. Special thanks to Arash, our website guru, for joining us today on the show. How can we follow you and learn more about you, Arash?
Well, my Twitter handle is Arash Maheen. And yeah, that's pretty much all I use for the social media stuff. No Facebook, no anything. But yeah, you can follow me on Twitter.
And yeah, if you have any input about the website, etc., he's the man. So and I lean on him a lot for all that excellent work. And we have some ideas and things on the back burner that we're excited about releasing sometime in the future. So anyway, it's always great to interact with you, and thanks for joining us on the show. It's much appreciated.
Thanks a lot. My pleasure.
Thanks, Arash.
Yeah, and
yeah, man, thanks. The website rocks.
It does. Dr. Steph is at Plum Diggity on Twitter, and what else?
No, that's about
pretty
it.
much it. Huh? You know what? That's really all you need to do, right?
Yeah, just Twitter. How many social media sites do you really need? I can only keep up with one anyway. That's enough. Takes up enough of my free time at work. Like 30 seconds. Twitter.
Okay. Miami Rick, any thoughts before we go?
No, it was another great show. Everybody in the chat room, thank you so much for your contributions, and thank you so much for making this, one of the top aviation podcasts out there. Is such a great time hanging out with you guys and being part of this community. Keep that great feedback coming, and look for some cool pictures tomorrow. I'm sure the dawn break's going to be amazing. So thanks again for hanging out with us, and we'll see you again.
And we need to see your breakfast meal.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. I'm gonna do. You'll see my breakfast.
I haven't seen a Periscope in a while, so.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, have a great trip, Rick, and everyone. Whether you're from the U.S. or not, I hope that you have a great Thanksgiving holiday. You can celebrate it with us in spirit. And for all those of you in the United States, be careful. It's the holiday week, and there's going to be a lot of
busy
crazy
travel.
Yeah.
Lots of people out on the roads. Be safe.
Exactly. So if you're new, if just listening for the first time, watching for the first time, head over to airlinepilotguy.com to learn more about the show and other ways to listen and watch. And yeah, and again, the coffee fund, airlinepilotguy.com/coffee. What was that? Oh, is that me? Did I hear?
I think so.
Wow, that's weird.
Yep.
That's the first I've heard of it on the show tonight. Anywho, so until next time, wishing you clear skies, unlimited visibility, and tailwinds. Take care, and God bless.
Thanks a lot, guys. We'll see you next week. Woohoo!
Sorry, I was waiting for Rick forever there. Good night,
I know.
everyone.
It's like, come
Good
on,
night.
Rick.
Take care, y'all.
Falling asleep at the switch. All right. There we go. Whew.
Yeah, you guys like Skyped out a little bit at the end of it. I didn't hear you finish. I didn't hear you finish, Jeff. And then
I just wait. I'm like, Rick usually says something before I do, so I'm gonna wait for Rick. And I was like, waiting.
I was like, I wasn't looking at the blab thing, so I was just kind of looking at my Evernote thing, and I'm going,
it's
why is he not
Skyped at the
saying
worst
anything?
possible moment? Why isn't he going woohoo?
Like,
dang it,
Rick.
Hello.
Hello.
Okay, let's do it again so I can edit this in.
Okay.
So until next time, wishing you clear skies, unlimited visibility, and tailwinds. Take care, and God bless.
Thanks a lot. See you all next week. Have a great Thanksgiving. Woo-hoo!
Happy Thanksgiving, y'all. Take care.
Take care, guys.
Yay.
Boom.
And they'll never know that we did that
Just
again.
drop the mic.
Wow, how late is it over there in the UK? It's like 2:00 in the morning or something ridiculous.
It's 2. Yeah, 2.
Oh my gosh!
My math is correct.
What are you people doing? Do we still have
You people work.
UKers?
You people work.
Yeah, really.
No.
What's going on? Are you
Bloody
retired?
bedtime. All one
Yeah.
word.
So what did you guys think of Blab? I can tell
like
you
Blab.
one thing I don't like about it is that it's using a lot more resources on my machine, and my fan was like making a lot of noise, which Google Hangouts
Well, I couldn't
does
hear
not
it.
do. You didn't hear it?
Mm-mm.
Every time I turned my mic on, I was going like somebody's taking a shower, like 10 feet away.
No,
I heard it.
I like it. I like being able to see everyone in the same size screen
Yeah,
all the time.
that is nice.
Yeah.
That is nice. I mean, there are a lot of things I like about it, and although the chat can get kind of distracting, especially when they're there was a
Well,
time. Rick, I don't
Not so
know
much
if you
the
were
chat,
watching.
but the props. Like, when this is
Did you
going
guys see
on
the
for.
turkeys? What was it? The turkeys
Yeah,
that
it
were
was-
running?
Oh, the turkey was.
video
Yeah,
about
those
the
were
turkey.
hilarious. I was
That was when I just about completely lost it. And Rick was in the middle of balanced field length or something like that. And I'm thinking, I feel so
I just
bad for
mute-
Rick because he's watching all of us and we're like cracking up, and he's going, "What's so funny about?"
He wasn't even looking at us. He was like off in his own
But I
little
was-
world.
I was imagining the whole thing in my head.
I'm glad.
I could tell he
you were
was not
looking.
looking at what we were doing. And
Because I was just about to fall off my chair. I was laughing.
How do you notice that?
Well,
So let's see.
Yeah.
Let's see. Blab is nice. Does it save after the fact? I think it's supposed to. So what I'm going to do here is my plan. I'm hoping after I hit the pause recording and stop this show, is that it's going to send me a link to the video, and then I'm going to download it, and then I'll upload that video to YouTube on the normal YouTube channel. So for those those that aren't normally watching the show, will see the video in there. That people subscribe via YouTube. So I'm hoping that works well.
People put a whole bunch of questions over on the left-hand side of the screen that we completely ignored.
I know.
Sorry, people.
Sorry.
Well, I only see 3, but
Oh, I
Let's see,
see.
Nick asked something about
1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
Airbus
6.
certification. Well, I can't scroll. Why can't I only see 1, 2?
7.
I only see 2. How do you scroll it down?
Oh, I don't know. Questions. I see Nick posted a
Yeah,
website and it says, what is the worst runway you've ever landed at? What kind of copters were you
I see that
discussing?
one.
How much of
And then I see-
Airplane, the movie, is real?
All of
Props
it.
or jet? Yeah,
Oh,
it's
all of
all
it,
right. Can you post the link
But I
to
mean,
your next scheduled blab?
How
on
are you
Strangely
looking
Unable to
at all
Search
those
For?
questions? Are you scrolling? How
No, they're
are you
just
able to
there.
scroll?
I don't even have to scroll. It's just one whole. I mean, remember my
Oh.
computer screen is like you
Yeah,
know,
it's like the
Oh.
size of a mural.
it's larger
That's
than my
why.
TV. So
Because I only see like Nick's, Mark, and then just like I see that David is asking a question, but I don't know what the question is because I can't
yeah, and
see
then
it.
Nick's got another one. Nick was the one who asked about how much of Airplane is real. Mark said props or jet. Simon says, can you post the link to your next scheduled blab? I'm strangely unable to search for it. But his question got answered by someone in the chat room. And then
Follow us on Twitter and Facebook.
yeah,
and
that got answered. Someone else asked about any UFOs. And I think that's when we were talking about the Mylar balloons.
Nick says, I noticed we can individually mute broadcasters. Could be handy. Now, can the
Oh,
people
you
in the
can?
audience mute? Can you mute? No, that can't be
Wait,
right.
go ahead. Old dot pilot. Try and mute me. Mute.
Yeah.
Can you mute
Go
me?
ahead.
Give
She's
it your best
still
shot.
talking.
Nope.
Is he-
Not muted. Not
Not-
muted. You can mute
Not
anyone?
muted. No, I can. No, Steph, you
well,
keep talking.
it's okay. Go ahead. Wait, did you mute me?
yeah, you can individually mute.
Yeah,
Really?
I can do it. Now, can you
Wait,
guys mute
can
me?
I mute? Can I mute?
Hello, 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 hello. Hi, hi, hi.
Yeah,
hi.
you can mute you too.
Yeah,
Oh,
gotcha.
she
Yeah, but it
muted
doesn't.
me?
I
It's
gotcha.
only for,
Everyone.
only for you individually. It doesn't mute you to everyone else. It's just for the person who clicks the mute button.
Oh.
So wait. So
okay.
if I mute, I'm going to mute my.
No.
Yeah, you're muted completely.
Okay, that's good to know because I muted myself a whole bunch when I was like.
Yeah, me
coughing.
too. See, the interesting thing is that you mute yourself, but it
It doesn't look like you're muted.
It doesn't look like you're muted
No,
at
I
all.
don't see anything.
Yeah, because I didn't know you were on mute at any point in time.
I muted myself a bunch.
Yeah, I did too.
No, I mute, but I use my mixer to do it because if I mute on Blab, then all the feedback and everything that's going into the Blab, you won't hear. So I've learned that lesson before. Like,
then it'll be a very quiet show.
Yeah, it's just like, okay, what's going on here? So much people
the
staring
APG
at this.
meditation hour.
That's right. Imagine what we're saying. It could be like, those bad lip reading videos someone will put together.
Oh, Nick Acosta said, I'm going to mute Rick during feedback.
Bring it, buddy.
Them's fighting words. Hey, Evan, how do you pronounce your last name? Is it Skoo
He said
or
Shu.
Shu?
He said,
oh, is it
I
Shu?
asked him.
Okay.
He said Shu.
Okay, thanks. And we're going to put your artwork as the cover art for the show, if that's okay with you.
That was from Micah, APG.
Okay.
Oh, nice.
Gotcha.
I thought you were flipping him off from his like, what did he do?
No, that's a different direction and a different finger. AP.
I like Micah.
Yeah. Really, really great feedback on the show. So thanks, all of
But
you.
in
who
British Sign
contributed.
Language, it's different. It's like I forget I don't know what the other letters are, but
Really? So British Sign Language has an accent as well?
yeah. Well, it's completely different. American Sign Language is based on French Sign Language.
And Welsh is a little bit different than.
Welsh is different.
So Evan says, I missed the start. Did Miami Rick like it? His art?
His artwork.
Oh, I loved it. It was
loved
great, man. I got such a kick out of that. I was like, wait a minute, that dude looks familiar. Wait, it's me. Ah.
So is it okay? Are you giving me permission to use that as the cover for the show, Evan?
Hello. Evan, respond.
I thought it was.
So I wonder.
Please,
okay, please do. Okay, so there's a bit of
quicker than
delay.
and that's nice because it is quicker than a 20-second delay.
This is like a
almost
10-second delay, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's like even if that.
Okay.
When we started, it seemed like it was almost instantaneous.
Me slow
typing.
typing.
It's slow typing.
That was awesome, Evan. Thank you, man. That was really cool.
Hey, Arash, thank you, Catherine, for letting, and your family for letting you spend hours in front of your computer instead of spending time with them.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
Anytime.
Yes, thank you for joining us. Always.
Okay, Rick.
Yeah,
I'd
I'm gonna
say
go.
it's time for you to go.
I'm gonna go grab a quick nap and then get the monkey suit on. I got to be at the airport in
All right.
an hour and 50 minutes. So, well, I'm probably
Fly
not even
safely.
sleep.
Safely.
Oh well. All right, guys. Take care,
Have a good
and
See ya.
we'll see you. We'll see you soon. Okay.
Happy Thanksgiving.
You too. Happy Turkey Day. Bye.
See ya.
Bye.
See ya.
All right. Captain L, has APG been cited in any divorces yet? Yeah, mine. Probably.
I'll let you know. Yeah. See, I didn't get married in the first place, so
You avoided all that hassle.
I don't know. There's probably some common law thing going on now for us. We've been together long enough. Jeez.
Yeah. Probably right. Yeah. So
I think it depends on how long we've owned property together. Maybe.
And you have for
We have.
some time now, right?
Not really. Not that long. A little bit of time.
Anyway.
Okay, guys, I'm going to check out.
Yes.
Yep.
All right, Rash. Thank you for joining us.
Take care.
See you,
My
Rash. Have a
pleasure.
good night.
Okay. Take care.
Bye-bye.
You guys too. Bye.
Yeah.
Bye.
I do still have to send him a picture. I got totally sidetracked last night, like looking through.
You didn't like my choices?
I liked your choices. They were good.
Okay. Well, thanks again, everyone. Man, it's just that's what makes this show so much fun is the interaction that we have. Because if it was just Steph and Rick and I just talking, then it wouldn't be as fun.
Not as fun. Definitely. Yeah. I love all the side conversation that goes on.
Yeah.
My multitasking skills have improved significantly since being a part of this show. It's like, hold on, I have to listen to the feedback that's going on. Like I've listened to it already, but I still got to listen to it to know,
Yeah, sometimes I'm thinking, I hope that they're, I know I can see all the stuff that's going on here and I'm going, I hope they're actually listening to this feedback because, we have to respond to it.
If I haven't actually listened, I won't participate in the chat. But if I've listened, sometimes I start. And then sometimes I go, wait, what was the question? but I try not to do that.
What are we talking about?
I know I listened to that. What was the question?
Well, I got to get kind of early as well, so I'm going to go ahead and shut it down, and we'll, if this works out, then we'll do it again next time. If not, then we'll go back to our Crowdcast / Hangouts on air and figure
good.
out something.
Seems like the feedback
looks
was
to me like most people thought it was pretty positive experience. So
the only big negative I heard was people don't like the that it's just Twitter handles. It's hard to know who's who sometimes.
Yeah.
But if you click on the name, it'll tell you who it is. It comes up with a little box.
That's
Unless
right.
you're like old pilot who only has his name as old.pilot.
Yeah, well, I mean, are you talking about Old Plot?
Old Plot, who can't spell pilot, apparently. No, just kidding.
Yeah, and once you got it, that's it, right?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I gotta go.
All right.
So
I'm
I
leaving
would love
too.
to spend the rest of the night with all you, so to speak. But
also,
so
go to bed if you're in the UK. It's 2 a.m.
Yeah, like what's wrong with you? Do you have a life? Yeah.
What else is there to like?
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
Good night, everyone. Goodbye. I'm leaving. Goodbye. Good night.
Bye-bye. Me too. See ya.